In 2003, MTV aired Spider-Man the New Animated Series, a show that has had mixed reviews with some disliking it and some loving it. The show was very much a mess production-wise, and I would even say the show itself can be a mixed bag, but this show is one of the most unique adaptations of the character to this day, and I'm going to be going over everything about this show. This show would go to some of the darkest lengths a Spider-Man show would go down, and would show a more mature side to this character. Hey guys, it's me, Crispy Curb, and I do these huge breakdowns of shows, and I've already done Spectacular Spider-Man and Spider-Man the Animated Series, so after this video, you should go check those out. It has a ton of information that you might not know about, and it shows why the creators of these shows love the character, and it shows through these videos. Now for this video, it's a bit strange because the showrunner is weirdly kind of non-existent. So here's the thing. A showrunner is not usually an official title given in TV. It's the producer, but it can be other people. For this show, Morgan Gandel, Brian Michael Bendis, and Marsha Griffin were the producers on this. For the other two Spider-Man shows, it was usually one person's main vision for the series, like Greg Weisman and John Semper. And they were the main reasons why the other Spider-Man shows worked so well, because they had a prominent showrunner and you could tell who the showrunner is because all the big decisions were made by them. In this show, it feels like there's no main person, and the fact is none of the producers talk about this show, so it's actually sad that it feels like there's no main guy at the head of the project that I can mention. I usually have the main head guy of the project be the symbol of the project, because they have the most say on why these creative decisions were made and the love that they had for this character. And I think the interviews and quotes help make that a reality to see why they're doing this or why they're doing that. So it's a shame that there's no one really like that on this show, until I found one person. One person that speaks so passionately about the show, one person that seems more like a showrunner but isn't the showrunner. He's a co-executive producer, which they can be showrunners sometimes, but he's just not a showrunner for this show. I'm gonna go over the difference real quick just in case any of you are confused about the differences about what a producer does and an executive producer does. Just know I do not study film and this is me going off what I've seen on the internet. A producer handles bringing the show to life. They develop scripts, hire people, oversee the production, and collaborate heavily with the writers to make their vision come to life. While an executive producer does have a big hand to play in the vision of the show, they seem to be more involved with business and to make the producer's vision come to life. They can hire actors, they can also oversee the production, and they overall align the network's wishes with the show itself. So yes, this person did have a huge role in the show, but the fact that he's not even a producer is mind-boggling to me because he seems to be the one really giving the info that Greg and John, the two showrunners for the other two shows, were giving. And he seems to be the most passionate about it. He's a co-executive producer, so he helps out with what the executive producer does. His name is Adu Padden. Adu Padden doesn't talk much about this show now, but he does give a lot of information through the Spider-Man the New Animated Series DVD, specifically this one, and that's going to be our backbone for this project. And as always, I will get information from the other people that have worked on the show, and this is going to be a complete breakdown of this short-lived series. Adu Padden, in my opinion, is the showrunner, even though I don't think he is, mostly because someone who worked on the show, which I will go over in a second, says he's not the showrunner, but I think he's the main head speaker of the project and seems the most passionate when talking about it. I just think he's considered the showrunner.
When we knew we were doing Spider-Man as a CG animated show, we were so excited because there were so many opportunities artistically to do something that had never been done before.
Adu's enthusiasm is very infectious. He has believed 1,000% in this project and has said from the very beginning, you guys aren't going to believe how it's going to look. And it's just fantastic, and we've done this, and the technology is unbelievable. And, you know, as an actor, you nod and you go, all right, can't wait to see it.
Every single interview from here is coming from the Spider-Man the New Animated Series DVD I just mentioned, because there's absolutely no interviews outside of the show. But the great thing is there's enough material here that you're going to see how much work they put into the series and how much care was put into it. They also give information while you're watching the episodes, so I was actually insanely impressed with the DVD. Like, I'd actually recommend buying it because first of all, it's cheap, and second of all, it has tons and tons of information about the show. It's actually insane how much information about the show is in here. I've never seen anything like it. I was pleasantly surprised. They do a commentary track for each episode, and Stan Lee is even in one of them. They give a big behind the scenes look of the show, and there's a ton of production artwork that I'll be showing off from this DVD. I had to take everything off this DVD. It wasn't as easy as the other ones where most of the information is on a site or on YouTube. So this is really some stuff that no one's really seen unless you had this DVD. I truly only recommend buying this DVD if you're a super fan of the show, because the commentary tracks can be some of the most awkward things sometimes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This video will be on the shorter side, but that's because it's a shorter show. And I don't like stretching out my videos just to stretch them out. If it needs to be 12 hours, then it's going to be 12 hours. I don't care how long a video is, as long as I'm getting everything. Anyway, grab some popcorn or do whatever it is that you're doing and enjoy. First, we're going to need some background for the show because compared to the other two, it's so different and so messy. So back in 2001, this show was greenlit for 13 episodes and was going to be closely based off the Ultimate Spider-Man comics by Brian Michael Bendis. But then in 2002, Spider-Man 1 would come out and be a huge hit, and this made everything a lot more complicated because now Spider-Man is a multi-million-dollar thing now. So this isn't some little thing anymore. The pressure is on for the whole team behind the show because now these executives all want to fight over things and it becomes a huge mess. There's a paragraph from Tim Eldren, who was a director on the show. He says, and I quote, "While we were hard at work, the Spider-Man movie came out in April 2002 and was an instant hit. I saw it right away and loved it. Finally, a Marvel film that measured up to the 78 Superman. It hasn't aged as well, but only because we've gotten better ones since then. It surprised everyone by earning over $100 million in its opening weekend. So the stakes for our little carnival suddenly went through the roof. We were now making a follow-up for one of the biggest movies of all time. We'd been through crazy productions before, but nothing prepared us for this. Usually studio battles go on at a level far above where the work actually takes place. Executive producers fight over a script until someone wins. Then that script is handed over to us. It's mostly hands off from above until we've got an animatic ready. Then they weigh in with notes and changes. We process those, pushing back on the ones we disagree with. Then the storyboard gets done and goes to the animators. Upper management doesn't have much involvement in our day-to-day labors. TNAS was a distinct exception to that rule. Recall that there were 3 entities in charge of this project: Sony, licensor, Marvel IP holder, and MTV broadcaster. Those were some big egos at the table right from the beginning. But after opening weekend, no single meeting room could contain them. There's a common phenomenon in TV, which I call the fingerprint race. Executives at a certain level want to get their fingerprints on a new project so they can take credit if it's a hit, but not too much in case it's a flop. When multiple execs do this simultaneously and in competition with each other, we get terms like development hell. But there's a point where development stops and they all do a slow fade into the background. After the first episodes of a series, they usually lose interest and move on, making production easier for those of us on the ground. If you happen to land a season 2, it gets much easier. But imagine what happens when your subject matter suddenly becomes the world's hottest potato. The executives come roaring back in, intent on pressing those fingertips as deep as they will go. And when you got 3 giant egos battling each other for creative control, something's got to give. Something did. They battled each other to a standstill. Nobody has veto power to settle the fight until they could find a way out of their mutual deadlock. The show was frozen in place. We still had to report in every day and we continued getting paid, but we couldn't continue working on episodes. Audie Patton took advantage of this by shifting us into R&D mode, investing projects that would be helpful to the show once it got up and moving again. As an immediate consequence, one entire episode that has been completely boarded was scrapped, never to be seen by anyone. I wish I'd kept that board because it would be a real jewel to share with you now. One of my assignments was to create a catalog of web slinging scenes that would be plugged in wherever they might fit. They were helpful not just for this show, but to a subsequent one 10 years later. I kept the unused shots just for the kicks, then hauled them back out of the vault for Ultimate Spider-Man in 2011. They fit perfectly and saved me a bunch of time. Another assignment was to create Fox storefronts for our New York City set. I spent a day out of the studio sketching buildings, then designed flat images that could be pasted into backgrounds. I don't remember if they actually got into the show, but it was a good idea. We were in this holding pattern for an unbelievable 2 months. We took long lunches, saw movies, and played video games, while the executives duked it out. When that 2-month period was up, the hiatus budget ran out, and we were all laid off for 2 weeks. When we finally came back in, we learned that a new showrunner had been chosen to oversee us. Morgan Gundel was an admirable fellow from the live-action world, miraculously capable of meditating all our 3 parent companies. We all liked him and got along fine. Once the show started up again, it was business as usual. Oddly, Morgan had departed after a couple of months due to larger commitments, but we got along fine in his wake with no further work stoppage from the executive suits. Maybe that negotiation finally took all the fight out of them. More likely, they just lost interest and move on like usual. End quote. It's also revealed here that Morgan Gundel is the showrunner and the previous showrunner got fired due to the movie coming out. I still count Adu as the showrunner because, again, he's the main head talking about it, and this showrunner didn't even stay on board for the whole 13 episodes. I know I still haven't gotten into the actual episodes, but that's because this one is entirely such a mess that I needed to talk about it because it's interesting how the movie impacted and completely changed the show. The series would finally air on July 11th, 2003, with it already being a huge miss, having all the episodes out of order, and you're probably wondering how did this happen? And there's no official answer, but I would assume it's MTV's fault. It seems that they did the order on when each episode was completed, and that's why it's a complete mess. If you watch it in the order MTV gave you, it's full with inconsistencies. Max Dillon becomes Electro in the first episode, but when you see him next, he's just a normal guy. There'll be inconsistencies with Peter's relationships. Even watching this show in order, it's still a mess with his relationships. What's even more annoying is if you try and watch this anywhere else like Disney Plus, the show will still be out of order. So again, another reason to buy this cheap DVD. I've done enough rambling about how mess this show was. Obviously, we are going to be breaking all these down in the order it's supposed to be in, not the airing order. This series is a strange one because it was originally supposed to be a sequel to the first Spider-Man movie and be part of Sam Raimi's portrayal of the character, but that obviously can't be the case for a multitude of reasons, like Peter, MJ, and Harry being in college, MJ's feelings towards Peter, Harry's feelings towards Peter, etc. I'll explain more changes in the breakdown.
Very beginning of this process, from a point of view of conceiving of the series, was a reaction, I think, to Brian's Ultimate Spider-Man comic book series. And at that point in time, the series was just stellar, and we were all really excited by the sort of things that Brian was doing dramatically with his work. And so one of the first people involved with this Spider-Man series was Brian. I think it was Bob Higgins who worked with Grace at the very beginning on the series, who initially contacted you. And I think you were working on a script before I even joined the series.
Yeah, actually, that's a very nice introduction. I'm going to buy this DVD now. That was nice. Yeah, actually, I think I got a call from Avi, actually, who...
That's Avi Arad from Marvel.
Yeah, who offered me to write the pilot for this, and it was a really nice offer because I was still new to Marvel, and Ultimate Spider-Man could have gone either way. It could have really tanked as well, as nicely as it's done. It was still an iffy proposition, so it was a nice vote of confidence to get the call. So it was very cool.
Well, there were a lot of things that you were doing with the character of Peter Parker and the others that was really kind of a nice new flavor twist on a classic story. How would you define how you see that interpretation, and then what sort of translation process did you have to go through to bring it to the small screen?
Yeah, this is actually something I just think about all the time. It's basically looking at the property of Spider-Man or the development of Spider-Man over the decades, and you realize that it doesn't need to be developed. There's nothing broken about it, and that's why the movie succeeded as it has as well. They didn't, try to reinvent Spider-Man. Spider-Man works. And I've said many places that it kind of seems to me that Stan Lee may be our Shakespeare in a way that you can take these characters and you can pull them out of the 60s and put them right into the 21st century and not change them, and all the humanity and the themes and the goals and the relationships of the characters all hold true. It all holds together, and really the only author I can think of that actually that applies to all his work is Shakespeare. You can take Hamlet and put it anywhere and it still works, and the same thing seems to work with Spider-Man or Daredevil or the X-Men. But Spider-Man always was my favorite and is my favorite, and it has to do with that it isn't about Spider-Man, it's about Peter Parker. And anyone can make Spider-Man look cool. I mean, Spider-Man is cool, but it's people caring about him as Peter Parker that really drives the story and drives the whole motivation of everything. So
This first episode dives straight in like we've known these characters, but I think it's still a strong start. Essentially, the episode revolves around ESU destroying Villeroy Towers, where people live, and the people are protesting against this because they are not getting compensated for this. We learn Oscorp is behind the destruction of Villeroy Towers because they want to build a science center there, and Norman Osborn is the one who wanted it there before he died. To make the people happy, they're going to make Harry present the Galileo telescope that they can auction off, so that'll compensate the people and everyone will be more okay with it. They specifically chose Harry because he goes to ESU, so him presenting it will try and be more in favor to the people at ESU. While this is all going down, someone who lives at Villeroy Towers starts stealing expensive artifacts to try and help people with the defense fund, but he actually starts doing it for selfish reasons because he's not doing it for them. His name is Lewis Wilder, or more known as Turbojet. So Turbojet is kind of a Robin Hood-esque type. He doesn't have much of a backstory. He's a janitor at ESU, he's a jerk to people, and we also learn a lot more information from his room because he puts up news clippings of things that he was involved with. So this actually gives us a lot more information about him. So he previously worked at NASA, and this suit was actually made for space, and that makes a lot more sense looking at the suit. He was stealing parts and was fired because of this, and the project was canceled. So I find it interesting that his backstory is just on the wall. It's kind of funny. On the wiki, it says that he might be working for the Kingpin, which doesn't make much sense since he seems very selfish. Maybe the artifacts he was selling to the Kingpin, but that just feels very headcanon to me. Turbojet steals artifacts to help the defense fund for not destroying the towers. The end result is Spider-Man reveals to the people that Turbojet isn't actually looking out for the people and is the criminal because everyone was thinking he was the criminal because they think he's going against the protest, but he's actually just stopping a criminal from stealing things. He tricks Turbojet when Harry has a speech when he's presenting the Galileo telescope to ESU because Spider-Man helps tip them off. And the people turn on Turbojet. Then he tries to escape with MJ as a hostage, which is your typical Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie trope, but Spider-Man ultimately beats him and everything works out. I'm gonna give this episode a 5 out of 10. I was surprised looking back on this show and remembering how funny it was.
You suck, Osborn!
Thank you.
There's this specific part that I found really funny. So MJ joins the protest and Peter and Harry are with her, and Harry tries to tell him that Oscorp is responsible for Villeroy Towers being destroyed, but they can't hear him because of the protest. So he says it louder, and the people that were protesting hear this, and they start throwing stuff at them. I just found that insanely funny. The dynamics between Peter, Harry, and MJ are so good. I'll get into more of this later, but they essentially nailed these 3 characters in the first episode, and they managed to keep that throughout the whole show. I'd say they even handled it better than the movies. They never all felt like friends in the movies, but you can feel their chemistry so well here. MJ always has this flirty attitude with Peter, and it's fun just seeing Peter being so clueless.
I don't think things are so black and white.
As in, your feelings for another person.
She's flirting with this man in like every other scene. Even in this episode, she points out how clueless he is on her liking him. But I feel this also contradicts the first Spider-Man movie, which is supposed to be in the same continuity, because it's clear at the end of the movie that she has feelings for him, but he rejects her due to his responsibilities as Spider-Man. But they tie in the first Spider-Man movie with Spider-Man and Mary Jane knowing each other and mentioning the feelings that she had for him. They even mention the kiss from the first Spider-Man movie. MJ kisses Peter at the end of the episode, but this doesn't really go anywhere in the next set of episodes, and it feels forgotten about. They also mention Spider-Man quote-unquote killing Harry's father, again tying this into the Raimi films. One thing I like is the public's reaction to Spider-Man. People are hating on him when he's just trying to help, and the cops think he's a criminal. That's very Spider-Man to me. I like the college setup. Spider-Man in college is always a treat to me. I hope we see more of Spider-Man in college. It's always him in high school. I think what would be great is if we saw the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show keep going and eventually going into college like Spectacular Spider-Man was going to do, because that feels like a natural progression of the character and seeing him grow. The reason that this gets a 5 out of 10 is the fact that, it can be a bit boring. The villain feels bland, and I think he could have been handled better. I think they treat the civilians dumb because if Spider-Man stops a crime, he's the criminal because he's stopping someone who's doing a bad thing, but they think it's okay that Turbojet's stealing stuff because he's helping them get their homes back. And even MJ agrees with that. She supports Turbojet, and Peter and her argue about it, which is just forced and doesn't really go anywhere. MJ also says the stupidest thing when she supports Turbojet. So in the episode, Turbojet electrocutes this guard while he's getting the book for the money to fund the defense of Villeroy Towers. And MJ is at the protest, and Peter tells her we shouldn't be supporting Turbojet because he sent that guy into a coma. And MJ's response is,
A cop on a high-speed chase runs over a civilian. How is that any different?
and MJ is actually an idiot. That is 2 completely different situations. This is a criminal that almost killed a cop by robbing something compared to a cop that accidentally ran over someone during a high-speed chase. You cannot compare these 2 scenarios, and it makes MJ look so stupid and inconsiderate. Another problem is that the protesters, I guess, just cared about the money in the end, because I guess selling the Galileo telescope just fixed it, even though that shouldn't be the main problem. The main problem should be them getting kicked out of their homes. Then my final problem is that this just doesn't work as the first episode because they really just throw you right in. They don't do a great job introducing these characters, and they just expect you to get it. And I feel like this would be just a random episode in the season, and all of them just kind of feel that way, actually. I feel like this episode tries to hone in the fact that you've already saw the movie, and if you didn't, that's your fault for not getting these characters, which I find not to be a good way to introduce these characters, especially with how different they are in this show. That's pretty much all I have to say. There's not too many Easter eggs in all the episodes. In this one, Spider-Man does this.
I'm Spider-Man.
Which is obviously a reference to Batman. Turbojet was supposed to be Rocket Racer because he's named Rocket Racer in the concept art. His design is also completely different, and the gadget he uses is different as well. The thing that makes him move is on the front of him, and he could use this to propel himself backwards and could hit enemies in front of him. And it is also said in the DVD extras that in the original script for the episode, Turbojet flew backwards instead of forwards. It's interesting that his design seems to be pretty well thought out, actually, and they probably just couldn't get the rights to Rocket Racer for whatever reason. It seems like it got pretty far into development too. Here's the suit colored, and then this is the design they ended up going with when they changed him into Turbojet.
I think the DVD viewers have already seen Turbojet, which was an interesting one. We were trying to get a guy who moved quickly and sort of moved through the cityscape to take advantage. In a very unique way. In a unique way, but it went through so many permutations. We originally talked about him having a vegetable steamer basket.
It was going to be homemade stuff that you buy at the hardware store. He's an electronic whiz. He had it all strapped to his body. It looked like a circuitry board with like a trip to Williams-Sonoma kitchen store.
It was a steamer basket that would open up and when it depending on which direction he was going. And we thought that was so funny.
And poor David has to live with this kind of much.
We
about
had
that.
there was
sketches.
50 or 60, I remember.
And yet that wasn't quite pleasing everybody because it wasn't deemed to be cool enough. He was on it's coming back to me, he was on a homemade skateboard.
Yeah.
He had juiced up. That's how it started.
He had catchers padding on his
Oh,
back.
yeah.
Because he was flying backwards at that
Right,
time in the
right,
story, and he kept slamming into walls and bashing into stuff. He had no control. He just sort of was like an explosive burst back.
He's wearing
That
like
sounds
urban
great.
camouflage.
He was a great character, and he came out great, but just I'd say different.
Yeah.
Very different.
I just found myself a lot digging in the garage looking for inspiration.
Or the
oh,
kitchen.
the caulk gun. Let's use that in show 7.
And
Well,
we
you know,
did.
And we did.
We did.
Speaking of different, to me, anybody who can come up with something different today is a genius and should feel very grateful, because when you think about it, almost every type of villain, as well as every type of hero, has been done before. I mean, you've got people who run fast, people who can be invisible, people who can climb on walls, who can jump over a building. You name it, somebody has already done it. And to me, the biggest problem, and the thing that's the most fun, is trying to come up with a different type of character.
We see Norman Osborn's photo in this episode, and his model was drawn after Harry's model was approved to maintain the family likeness, and they are both blonde, another reason it's not connected. I would say the events of Spider-Man 1 did happen in this universe, but things ended up playing out differently. And the characters act different and all the changes that are here compared to the first movie, so it's just a twisted version of Sam Raimi's version. We can also see Peter's parents and Uncle Ben and Aunt May, and the reason Aunt May isn't in the show at all is because this show aired on MTV, so they didn't want to show old people. The second episode gets into new territory, with Spider-Man being sought out by the FBI because they need him to get this super chip that can steal money from people. While this plot is happening, MJ wants Peter to come to her play, but the super chip plotline keeps getting in the way, and he keeps missing the play. MJ is upset at Peter every time he misses the play, and Peter is as oblivious as ever that MJ actually likes him, even though they kissed last episode. The FBI told Spider-Man that if he gets the chip, he'll be claimed a hero, and if that he scratches their back, they'll scratch his. So it's a two-way deal. Spider-Man steals the chip, and he gives it to this mysterious man in this limo with a burger attached to the back of the limo. Spider-Man talks to the man in the limo and asks where the agent he was talking to is, but the mysterious person just says that he has more important things to do than pickups. The limo leaves, and Spider-Man feels cheated because the deal was that they would help each other. Spider-Man then starts heading to MJ's play, but when he's about to arrive, he sees the agent reading a script, and he learns that he was just an actor, which is a crazy coincidence. Spider-Man realizes he just got tricked, and turns into Spider-Man to go find the limo with a burger on the back of it. Spider-Man and the limo end up in a back alley, and we see the Kingpin played by Michael Clark Duncan, who played the Kingpin in the Daredevil movie. Spider-Man roasts Kingpin.
Will I be fighting any of your henchmen, or did you already eat them?
Spider-Man beats his henchmen, but when he starts to fight Kingpin, his strength is insane, just like the comics. He also has his cane that can blow stuff up, which I think is cool. Kingpin somehow gets away. Spider-Man kind of just lets them get away because they're walking on foot. I like how he was able to catch them when it came to the limo, but when they're on their feet, it's over. He's just too quick. Spider-Man contacts the FBI and tells them about the chip and the crime boss who just took it. Spider-Man arrives at the play after it ends because of that whole situation, and MJ starts hugging her maybe boyfriend, but we'll never see him again after this episode. I always liked that aspect of Spider-Man where he had to choose what to do, and it always affects Peter negatively because he chooses his responsibilities as Spider-Man over his Peter Parker life, not because he wants to, but because he feels like he has to. They also parallel the same scene in Spider-Man 2 where Peter wants to be at her play and he keeps trying to make it, but Spider-Man keeps getting in the way, and even her going with another guy after he keeps not showing up. They even paralleled the flower scene later in the episode where he doesn't have enough money for all the flowers, so he doesn't get that many, and they take most of the flowers away from him. Getting back to the episode, when he tries to see MJ's play again, the FBI throw him into a van because you can't be anonymous when calling the FBI, and they start asking him a ton of questions like how he's involved in all this, and where's Spider-Man? And Peter just doesn't know how to answer. They even take his biochemistry recorded teaching lesson that he was going to give to MJ because they think he might be involved in bioterrorism. They then drop him off in New Jersey. Peter tries explaining to MJ and Harry that he was kidnapped by 2 FBI agents, and they obviously think he's lying. Harry also makes a small Men in Black reference.
Did they have a talking pug?
The FBI call Peter again, and they tell him that they intercepted a foreign communication an hour ago, so a satellite uplink is about to happen. So if it doesn't stop tonight, then the Kingpin wins. Peter then remembers that they are going to be using the mini chopper to get around, the same one that had gotten his attention in the beginning. He tells the FBI this and asks Harry if he still has influence at Oscorp. Harry says yes, and Peter says he's going to need a favor. Then we skip over to Spider-Man and the FBI going after the Kingpin before he establishes the satellite uplink. Kingpin tries to escape in a helicopter, but Spider-Man starts going after him and the helicopter crashes. Spider-Man catches the Kingpin, but he's too heavy so he starts to fall, and Spider-Man shouts, "No!" and the Kingpin falls, and it awkwardly cuts to Kingpin being webbed inside the thing that fell, and he's trapped in it with webbing. It's not really explained, it just kind of happens. Peter finally goes to MJ's show, and MJ starts thinking why she was so over obsessed on why she wanted Peter to see her. He says she was great, gives her flowers, and she kisses him on the cheek. She goes away with a tear in her eye, and she goes off with that same guy from the previous night who seemed like a jerk. He was even rushing her to hurry up. They both leave upset, and the episode ends. I'm mixed on this episode. There's some good stuff in here, but I feel like there's more bad than good. Like, Kingpin feels dumb and they play him off as a fat joke sometimes. He asks if anyone wants coffee and nobody says anything, and then he says good, like he'd killed them if they wanted coffee, and then he puts a huge whipped cream on top of it. And you know, the burger on the back of the limo, that's just not Kingpin to me. Maybe I'm too spoiled by the Daredevil show's interpretation, not born again, and the 90s Kingpin, so this one just feels hollow, lacking any real motivation besides being rich. I also liked in those interpretations, like, he didn't feel like he had to get his hands dirty and would send out people to do the jobs for him. The only thing I did like was that he tricked Spider-Man. His design is cool with him having a pink outline around him, and then his cane was also awesome. Michael Clark Duncan reprises his role, and it's interesting because the Daredevil movie was still 6 months away while they were in production for the show. So this is essentially a new take on Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin. Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin is more accurate in the show than in the movie. I would say it's a whole new take on the character, kind of just like every character on this show, funnily enough. Would I say that this connects to the 2003 Daredevil movie? No, but I think at the time people would have thought it was connected to the 2003 Daredevil movie. It's essentially headcanon though to think what you want to think. I think he's his own thing because everything in this universe is its own thing. I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. There's just not much here I care about. The plot, in my opinion, is poorly written. Spider-Man gets tricked by the Kingpin, and Spider-Man figures this out and stops him. The Peter stuff is fine. I enjoyed that it tied in with Kingpin's plot. I think Neil is doing a great job as Spidey and Peter, and the whole cast is honestly a treat. No problems there.
And as a voice actor, we start out with the audition phase where you're one of about 100 people, and then all of a sudden you're one of one. You are the man. You're the one that has to kind of make really solid choices about what's driving this person. And by the second show, you're really nailing it. What's your process?
I don't know. I just wanted to differentiate between Peter and Spidey as best I could, and we went back and forth with that for a while. But I think to have a little bit of a higher pitch to his voice and a little stammery, a lot of stutters, that actually thing that you kept putting into it was sort of very Peter Parker, and then to have Spider-Man be a little cooler and deeper voiced.
What you're describing is that things that happen sort of improvisationally with at the recording that worked so well that the writers just started incorporating it back into stories again.
True.
Phrases.
True, and my double backflip is very, very tight.
There's honestly not much to talk about here. That line where Peter asks Harry for a favor never goes anywhere. Mary Jane just goes with that one dude that she clearly doesn't want to hang out with. Just go with Peter if you want to go with Peter. You met this guy like yesterday. It's just all a mess and not insanely intriguing in my opinion. Again, my favorite aspect was him having the duality of picking between doing the Peter thing or the Spider-Man thing. I think that's always great. Now I'm going to be going over the Easter eggs and other things. Peter says this in the episode after MJ asks,
"We all have our priorities, and it's lovely that yours is graduating mega cum laude and is going on to be some sort of international brainiac."
I actually prefer photography.
This is interesting because most versions of Spider-Man don't prefer photography over science. Photography just happens to be something that can get him some money. They have a whole showcase on how Kingpin's cane worked and what utilities it has. They also had one for the helicopter, but there's nothing too special about it. It is also said that the cane's been given a more African design. In the trivia on the DVD, it says that the machinery in the lab here is comprised of spider robot parts from the Heavy Gear animated television series, which doesn't surprise me that they were using resources for other things in this CGI environment. Another trivia from the DVD, it says that this quote-unquote men's magazine is a leftover prop from the Pop Princess version of episode 1, The Party, which is the first aired episode. I don't really understand what they mean by the Pop Princess version of episode 1. I get into it a little bit, but I don't really understand what Pop Princess means. This series hasn't been great so far, so let's get into the next episode. The beginning of this episode shows Peter wanting to be a normal college student and having fun, but for some reason he can't do this and feels like he's a cool loner guy. Connors notices him looking out the window, and we learn he hates fun.
I hope you're not thinking you'd rather be out there having mindless enjoyment instead of helping me rewrite the textbook on cell regeneration.
We learn that this reptilian DNA that they're studying can maybe bring back a person's limbs. He gets Peter to leave, and like an idiot, he just tested it on himself. Peter goes down to meet Harry and MJ to hang out with them, but Harry's not in such a great mood because it's the anniversary of his dad's death, which has been a whole year. So it's been an entire year since the first Spider-Man movie's events took place. Now that the estate is settled, Harry needs to go through his dad's things, and he wants him to help him. They agree, but Peter forgot to give Dr. Connors his readouts or something. Basically, the writers needed to make him go back to Dr. Connors somehow. Connors had already left the lab, and we see him witness a hijacking, and Dr. Connors just straight up calls out the hijacker. Before he gets shot, Spider-Man comes to save the day. Spider-Man stops the hijackers, and the cop that's played by Ed Asner, who played J. Jonah Jameson in the 90s series, think that Spider-Man was in cahoots with the hijacker because he was just there. He's basically Jonah as a cop. Even Dr. Connors was like, no, Spider-Man actually saved me. And he's like, yeah, right. Peter meets up with Connors to try and give him the lab results, but the cop assumes he saw everything and wants him to take him into questioning at the police precinct tomorrow. Even though Peter didn't even do anything, they don't even ask Connors questions, nor did they even take Peter's information, so Peter technically could just not go. I don't think he's required, it's dumb. We arrive at the next day where we see Peter and MJ meeting up with Harry to help him with his dad's things, and he says he can only stay for 2 hours, and then it cuts to the next scene. That was just a weirdly written in there, but to be fair, most of the show is weirdly written. Dr. Connors injects himself again, and then we move over to Peter at the police precinct. Cop Jonah interrogates him, but suddenly the lights go out, and this cool red light comes on, and Peter looks at the hijacker being interrogated into the other room, but suddenly he's attacked by the lizard, and we don't see him, but we see him get thrown into the wall with a tiny bit of blood covering the window. Peter turns into Spider-Man into this really cool way with them using the flashing red lights, and as it keeps going on and off, you can see him change. I just like that touch, it's awesome. Spider-Man starts chasing after the lizard, and they start fighting each other, but they keep him in the shadowy light so we can't see him fully. This was definitely done for more of a horror aspect, and it seems like that's what they were going for, and I genuinely like it, and I think it works well, especially for the lizard. The lizard gets away, and as soon as he does, the NYPD come upstairs to try and arrest Spider-Man, but he escapes. We then get this extremely poor interpretation of Jonah, who's trying to copy J.K. Simmons' performance, but you can't copy perfection like J.K. Simmons. I don't understand why he's trying to imitate him when it's clear they've been doing different interpretations of these characters already, so they should have just done their own thing. Or how about use Ed Asner, again, since he's in the episode, and he appears a couple times in this series. Just a weird choice in my opinion. He also talks to Betty Brant, but we don't see her in the series. Peter goes to class, but there's a sign that says Dr. Connors has canceled class. Peter goes to visit Dr. Connors, but he won't show his face. It's weird because it should be obvious to Peter at this point that he's the lizard since he's seen the lizard, and he was working on something with Connors to help him regrow his arm involving lizards, but this isn't enough evidence for Peter. Even here, I feel like he's talking to Peter. He's like, I'm definitely not a lizard, Peter. You think I'm a lizard guy? No, Peter. I'm just your normal teacher, Peter. He just starts like hissing at him. Then Peter's like, I wonder if he turned himself into a lizard using the serum I was helping him experiment. Nah, it's probably just a coincidence. It's funny because it's pretty much what happens. Like, he's even hiding what he looks like from Peter. Basically, Connor tells him that he lost his arm by an industrial accident, and Peter notices he's acting suspicious, but not that he's a giant lizard. And he grabs some coat to run some tests on it because Peter's an idiot. Peter finds out he's the lizard and goes to confront him, but he's injected himself again. So he goes crazy and starts going to Oscorp to do something. I don't know why, because Norman is dead. They do explain that the industrial accident was like Oscorp, so that's their fault. But Norman is dead. What are you doing, buddy? And it's also nighttime and like nobody's there. Harry is there by his lonesome because he got MJ to leave because he wanted to be by himself to take in the stuff that he's finding out about his father because there's so much he didn't know about him. Spider-Man goes to Oscorp to try and protect Harry because the lizard thinks Harry is Norman because lizard drugs. Spider-Man and him duke it out. And Spider-Man tries talking to him again, but again, lizard drugs. Don't do lizard drugs, kids. Harry calls the police, and a police helicopter comes by, and as soon as Lizard is about to kill Spider-Man, he webs one hand to the helicopter, and the other hand he uses to pick up the lizard. Spider-Man tries to reason with him, but the lizard cuts the web line, and he falls to his death. And the lizard sheds a single tear, and Spider-Man makes a quip.
Genus Aranii, at your service.
Peter and MJ go to check up on Harry, but Harry just wants to be alone. The episode ends with Peter and MJ essentially tells him that a bunch of bad things happened to you, like you've lost a bunch of people in your life, but you're still looking out for your friend Harry. And then she kisses him again, and then Peter talks about how he gets to have fun after all. And life is just full of unknowns, and that's the end of the episode. I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. This plot is just so weird. It's like they are making things happen so they can have a cool set piece sometimes. Like Peter being in the police station so he can go after the lizard in it, but the way they got him there just feels stupid. What about the lizard going to Oscorp? What was he trying to accomplish there since Norman is dead? They just wanted Spider-Man to fight the lizard at Oscorp? I don't like Dr. Connors. He's just a jerk in this episode. I don't know why I'm supposed to care that he died because it's clear even Spider-Man didn't care since he makes a quip right after, and he wasn't particularly compelling in any way. I just don't know why I'm supposed to care. They don't give you a reason to care. In the original comics and the other shows, we care about Connors because he's a stand-up guy trying his best to regrow his limb. He has a family that he cares about. It's sad to see this guy who just wants his arm back, and when he tries his best, he ruins his life or is ashamed that it happened. In this one, there's no reason to feel bad for him. He's just a guy who was determined to grow his arm back, and he hates fun. I still found enjoyment in the episode, and I still think there's some great moments, but that's all that's here is some great or cool moments. It's confirmed here that it's been a year after Harry's dad's death, which is strange. It really seems like they didn't care about the continuity of the Raimi trilogy and just said we're going to do whatever we want. Harry finds some of what his dad was working on with the military, like drugs for human enhancement and wide area fragmentation explosive rounds, which is a cool way to show Harry finding out that his dad was secretive with his stuff. It's actually a good reference to the first movie and Harry unraveling that his dad was hiding all this stuff. I think it was well done. Lizard's design is cool. He's voiced by Rob Zombie, which worked well for Lizard, but not so great for Dr. Connors. In the Daily Bugle, there's a reference to him with this here. Zombies invade Manhattan, and this is a reference to him. The bad guy on the motorcycle was originally the head kidnapper in the reworked Pop Princess episode, so again, don't know what that is, and I'm assuming it was supposed to be the first episode, but when the movie came out, that changed. Apparently, Ed Asner came to the animation house to watch the artist create the first sequence in the police station. The lab coat that the Lizard usually wears in the comics was going to be worn by him, but they had a difficult time trying to animate it, so he loses it very quickly. In the trivia, it is said that the broken glass here resembles a web pattern. It's got that spectacular Spider-Man thing going on. The Lizard had the most painted textures of all the characters on the show. The mainframe logo is in the back here. I don't see it, but that's what it says in the trivia. It's here somewhere.
It was months before you actually got to see any footage, because obviously we had to kind of go and build it from scratch. When you finally got to see what it was you were performing to, did it make any difference for you?
Yeah, it made a huge amount of difference. I remember we were all together when we watched, I think you showed us rough version of episode 1.
Yes.
And we were all just blown away at the effects, because we have no idea, we have no concept when we're doing the voices of what the effects will look like. And the effects on this show are just out of control good.
You're just hoping it's not a sock puppet show.
Yeah, well, exactly. We have no
There's
idea.
anything wrong with a good sock puppet
Sock
show.
puppets are hilarious. But
you got the job. Go ahead.
But it's interesting to see which, like, yeah, after I saw that, I sort of got a grasp of what kind of facial expressions you were able to use, because that's a little limiting, I think, still in the animation.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
this is actually more remarkable compared to the other stuff that we have all worked on.
Oh,
over
I
the
totally
last
agree.
6 or
No, it's
7,
no
8
complaint.
years.
It's just because they're computer generated, they can do a finite amount of movement to their face. So the action sequences, you can really...
It's more liberating in some ways.
Yeah,
This episode begins with Spider-Man saving a ton of people in a pretty cool scene, and he's being watched by these strange men and a woman in a green latex bodysuit, and they are studying how fast he is, how fast his reflexes are, and how strong he is. And this lady in green says that's her kind of challenge, and then she violently steps on me. We skip over to Peter and Harry watching MJ with her rehearsing a scene with that guy she was hanging out with 2 episodes ago, but it's unknown if it's the same guy just because they reuse a ton of the same models for characters. MJ makes the role, and we learn it's being run by Richard Damien. Richard Damien leaves, and we find out he's working with the green latex bodysuit Thigh Crusher. Richard Damien has hired her to catch Spider-Man because he collects rare species of animals and wants to add Spider-Man to his collection. We see her show off a bit of her skills after his bodyguard doesn't think she can handle Spider-Man, but she proves him wrong immediately. Spider-Man's spider sense goes off while he's swinging around, and he sees a mugging going down, but when he comes face to face with the muggers, we find out that they were actually working together, and he falls into a trap, and now he's trapped in a cage. We now learn her name is Shakata, and they begin to fight. The cops arrive, so the other thugs that were with her try and shoot Spider-Man, but she cuts off the thug's finger because she wants to kill him herself. Cop Jonah arrives and sees Spider-Man and thinks he's involved with this whole ordeal. Shakata and Spider-Man escape, and the thug ends up dropping his phone. The next day, Spider-Man tracks down Shakata with the phone. She tells him she wants to fight him because he's a worthy adversary, and then escapes. MJ goes to Harry crying because the script for the movie she's playing in sucks. Harry, with his influence, helps her get in touch with Richard Damien. Shakata goes to Richard to tell him that she won't capture Spider-Man alive because it would be dishonorable. His bodyguard tells him that if she says anything, he's in trouble, so Richard wants him to kill her. He tries to kill her but is unsuccessful, and Spider-Man also helps her. Everyone gets away, but Shakata kills the bodyguard and Richard. MJ arrives to meet with Richard but sees that he's been beheaded. She runs away only to see a gilf outside with a sword putting it up against the moon and somehow turning her into a MILF. Shakata sees MJ, so MJ starts running away. Spider-Man sees Shikata and they begin to fight. Spider-Man refuses to kill her, and MJ for some reason shouts out for Spider-Man in the crowd, and one of Shikata's thugs puts a gun up to her head, and Shikata says that if he doesn't fight her to the death, then she'll die. So they fight and Spider-Man starts kicking her ass. MJ pepper sprays the goon and tells Spider-Man that the sword is the source of her power, so he destroys the sword and she dies. Yay! MJ for some reason thinks Spider-Man fought Shikata for her, even though he didn't even know she was in danger. MJ thinks they make a good team because she shouted how to defeat Shikata, and she lifts up his mask and kisses him even though she kissed Peter in the last episode. So she's just for the streets, just like Raimi MJ. Maybe this is the same MJ. They have a weird moment at the end where I guess they're like an unofficial couple. I don't know, it'll probably be forgotten after this episode because that's what's been happening. I mean, she kissed Peter twice at the end of the 2 episodes, and then they act like nothing happened after. Then that's the end of the episode, and it kind of abruptly ends there. They don't explain that the situation may have upset her since she was supposed to be in a movie or anything, so that plotline truly doesn't matter. It's completely there to take up time in the episode and have her be there at the end. I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. It's just there's not much here for me to care about. The villain should have been Kraven since that's his whole thing in the comics to fight a worthy opponent, and they also use him later at the end of the season, so I'm not sure why they didn't just use him here. It's just weird. Shikata isn't interesting, and the whole motive never intrigued me in the first place. She wants to fight a worthy opponent. It's just so one-dimensional. Shikata doesn't have a cool design and her powers were a bit vague. I guess the moon gave her epic voodoo magic powers? I don't know. Most of the episode is focused on the whole Shikata being hired, but that doesn't matter because she kills the guy she's hired by because it's not honorable. It's just very boring.
We were speaking, or we will be speaking on another DVD track about Sword of Shikata, how that originally was Kraven. Did we come to you and say we need to use Kraven, and you turned it into something else because we couldn't use Kraven, or what was the evolution?
I remember the process. It was initially we wanted Kraven, then we couldn't use Kraven, then it was a guy, then it came back where, no, we're going to make it a woman. And I'm like, a woman? Like, we're going to make it a woman. And I had said to you, well, can we just make it a really dark episode? And you said, that's it, let's go dark.
That was it. I think that was the spark for that episode, is to make it really dark and more mystical. And you definitely brought that to the table because I had done, at that point, probably 10. And this one we're looking at right now is a good example. This was an existing Spider-Man villain, the Lizard, and sort of the origin of the Lizard. And we had gone kind of dark on this. And in the scene you're about to see especially, it gets a little violent. And early in the in the evolution of producing these scripts, which were yet to be animated, there was a question about, well, how sophisticated, how adult did we want to go? You're about to see some. Here it comes. Some violence coming up, and there was concern about which age group it appealed to, those kind of things. But when we got to Sword of Shikata, it was sort of like, okay, we can really let her rip with this.
Sure.
And, she beheads a guy. And
I remember when you wrote the beheading, and I went, oh, cool.
Yeah. I thought, well, we'll see who's looking.
The development of a character comes initially from you, the writers. You're sitting around in a room. How does it happen? What's the beginning?
Usually we sit around for a while and then look at menus as it gets close to lunchtime. We're thinking, where are we going to go have lunch? And maybe about day 3, somebody says, well, we got to have a character, a villain. Really, I think there were a limited number of Marvel villains we could use. This was originally going to be Kraven the Hunter. And I'd be curious, Stan, how did Kraven the Hunter originate?
Well, the biggest problem, as you can imagine, is finding somebody who'll be a worthy opponent for a hero who has superhuman strength, who can swing on webs and do all the things that Spidey does. And it occurred to me that somebody who had the power of, if not the power of, somebody who was good enough to defeat virtually any animal on its own terms, who could outrun a cheetah and out-wrestle a tiger or a gorilla and so forth, would be a great guy for Spider-Man. And I also liked the drama of the fact that he felt he had conquered virtually every type of animal, and now the only prey left that was worth going after was a human being, if you want to consider Spider-Man human.
That reminds me, that is the genesis of this episode. I had forgotten that. We kind of split the Kraven characteristics and came up with our bad guy in this one, not Shikata, the swordswoman, but the bad guy with his henchmen, who has hunted every living animal, and the one left is Spider-Man.
Well, there you go.
So he splits and he hires Shikata, who is the new villainess, to go do his hunting for him. And that annoys her later.
I'm glad he did, because she was better to look at than he was.
I agree.
For the Easter eggs and details, it is said in the trivia Spider-Man is running 60 miles per hour here. Richard's main room is Norman Osborn's office, but they redid everything to make it look like a new room. In the cage scene, there's graffiti on the wall, and some of the tags are the animator's personal logos. The masked thugs were designed for the Pop Princess episode, but reworked for this episode. This is a Bruce Lee homage. For some reason in the trivia, it says that Spider-Man lifting up the car while he's fighting Shikata is a homage to Superman, even though it doesn't seem like it was supposed to be. Okay, I'm not even halfway into the show, but I do feel like I've been harder on it compared to the other two Spider-Man shows I made breakdowns of, but that's just because it genuinely feels like this one is struggling to find its place. I'm not sure what this show is trying to be or trying to accomplish. It feels lost in a way that the other two shows don't. It's having a hard time trying to find its identity. I love all the main characters. Neil, as I said, has been doing great as Spider-Man, but the villains and the plot centered around them haven't been for me, and I think they have done some good things for sure, but for me, it's just been elements of things and not everything fully. The main cast I love, but MJ can be annoying sometimes and feels out of character sometimes. The villains haven't been for me. They really haven't caught my interest, and they all just seem like bad people. I think when you're developing a villain, you need to be sympathetic for some of these guys, but I don't feel that towards any of them. I'm not saying that I need to feel sympathetic for all of them, but give them some depth and stop making them feel one-dimensional. The 90s show had this problem as well, but even that show made an attempt at making them feel more developed and well written. I feel like this show needs something like that to make it go from this is bad, but this could be really good. It just needs the proper care to the writing and the villains. I feel like anyone could make these stories better by just adding things and make it better. For example, what if in the first episode Turbojet was actually helping people and not doing it for selfish means? Wouldn't that put Spider-Man in a dilemma and question if he's doing the right thing or not? What about episode 3? We can build up Connors and make us actually care about him, and when he dies, that will give us some impact. A scientist who just wanted to help the world but ends up failing and dying because of it. What about this episode? What if we gave Shikata a proper motivation? What if to fulfill the prophecy by the moon gods or something, she needs to defeat Spider-Man to save her people, but she realizes he's not a bad guy and has to betray them, and Spider-Man has to help her out. That one wasn't a great example because I used 10 seconds to make that plot, but there's so many ways to make it better, and I don't think they're trying, especially in the last episode, because they wasted so much time on this stupid Shikata plot. The writing for this even feels off. Scenes like they happen too fast, or not much is happening in them, or something is made to happen in a way because they want a specific scenario to happen. I hope that this show does get better because I wasn't actually thinking this show was this bad, but now looking at it in a more critical light, I don't think it's as great as I remember. So let's get on with these next set of episodes. In this episode, we have a Black Cat stand-in, so it's another episode where they were originally going to use the person they're based on, but they just made their own. This one is more obvious that she was supposed to be Black Cat because if you change her entire appearance, it's Black Cat. But she does have a different personality. She is the exaggerated swagger of a teen in the early 2000s. Quick rundown of this one. Cheyenne is this burglar who robs things. Yep, that's her thing. She's a crook. But Harry Osborn fell in love with this crook in a city of 8 million people because forced drama since they needed perfect things to make a scenario they want work. Okay, let me just get this straight. I don't hate coincidences because sometimes it's needed, and some of my favorite shows have coincidences like Attack on Titan. But does that make it a terrible show? No, it made the plot interesting, and I see what they are doing here, but the question is, can they execute it well? And that's what I care about. Will it make the story more engaging for the viewer? And considering this show's track record, they haven't been doing it, so let's see how well they do here.
And it's also, too, like this, there were several characters that I know other people have talked about it, but it's that you want to use, but you can't use because they're either being used in something else or you need them to serve a specific purpose in this episode, and that's not what the character is within the Marvel library. So you're also sort of prevented from using things, or you have to stay more true to a character than you'd prefer.
And what you're specifically referring to is in this episode.
I am not.
Well,
yes, I am specifically referring to
this. As many people on the internet who have written about this show from a fan websites have guessed, was originally a Black Cat show. And then we cast Eve as the voice, and MTV suggested Eve, and at that point we wanted to have a character that was more in tune with who Eve was and sort of more in line with her. So we revamped the script and reworked the character to function as the talent.
Right. Well, that's crazy. So how often did that come into play? Did MTV want the villains to be? Did they want the music crossover? as often as they could.
Well, we had Rob Zombie playing the lizard, and we
right,
had,
he was
Eve.
awesome.
The initial idea was
they sound great, but was that an issue?
That was something that we wanted to do as often as possible, but it was a real challenge to get these music acts to do it for us because we had very short timelines. We'd have a script done on Wednesday, we're recording on Friday.
Right.
You send it to Gwen Stefani's agent, there's barely enough time for them to say yes or no.
Right.
So the initial mandate was that as much as possible, we would use them.
Harry is really into this girl. He's usually the one girl a week kind of guy in this show, a true playboy, but this girl, she's quote unquote different. That's what we all say, Harry. Harry invites everyone to meet each other over dinner, and not much happens really. His friends Peter and MJ spend most of the time joking on Harry that he has feelings for a woman, but they are ultimately happy for him. But when Peter meets her, he obviously realizes it's the crook that he met at the beginning of the episode, and they are all having a good time, but Peter says,
"So, Cheyenne, did you know Harry's rich?"
But Cheyenne basically says she's rich too, and that they have feelings for each other, so she could care less about money. Then that's dinner. Wow, it's just a scene to take up time. Surprising. Again, do something interesting here. Why have this scene be so lame? We don't learn anything new about Cheyenne besides she's rich. We don't explore her further. We don't know why she likes Harry other than they both come from screwed up families. Like, I feel like if you're going to commit this much time to your villain, then do something with it. By the way, 9 minutes into the episode, and that's all that's happened. Cheyenne turns into her alter ego with no name. Spider-Man meets up with her to try and change her ways, but fails because everyone in this world is a bad person. She tells her to meet him someplace tomorrow, and we skip over to him looking through the window of his apartment, and she's kissing Harry. Such chemistry they have. Peter starts talking to someone on his computer who might be Gwen Stacy in this universe, since her name is GS122, which is the issue she died, and her initials are GS. So interesting stuff, but it's anonymous, so he's talking as his username Webhead. So he tells her if she should tell his friend the truth, and she tells him that real friends tell the truth. Peter is about to tell Harry that she's a crook, but she comes down the stairs from his bedroom implying they had sex. Peter doesn't get a chance to ask him about her since she's there with him, and they invite him to hang out. He agrees out of pressure, and they start rock climbing outside of ESU. Do colleges have rock climbing outside sometimes? Genuinely curious if this actually happens. They start climbing, and we see Peter retract the spikes from his fingers, like in the first Spider-Man movie. Peter tries to test her ego by climbing up the wall fast, but she goes the same pace that everyone else is going. Peter doesn't trust her. MJ trusts her because she helped her during the rock climbing, and Harry likes her. MJ thinks he's jealous, and again, this doesn't go anywhere or make us feel any connection between any of the characters, and it's just boring. Then we go to a scene I actually enjoy. Harry comes to Peter's room to try and hang out with him so he can talk about his feelings towards Cheyenne. But Peter ignores his feelings because he's supposed to meet with his girl in about an hour. Okay, that sounded bad, but it's true. But I like the duality of Spider-Man like I've mentioned a million times. I just wish they did something with this because there's no consequences to him not being there for Harry when he needs it. Harry leaves the room sad that he couldn't get comfort from his friend. Spider-Man tries convincing her, he fails, she tricks him, he reveals that he knows her name, the police come, she gets shot in the leg, and they both escape. Cheyenne leaves Harry through a phone call, and then he goes back to being the normal Harry Osborn, and they go out for donuts, and the episode ends. What was this? I'm sorry, but this is getting a 3 out of 10. Are you kidding me? There's nothing here. What mattered? Harry didn't even care. Clearly Cheyenne wasn't as important than he thought she was because he forgets about her as soon as she leaves. Cheyenne is a nothing character. Guess what her character traits are? She steals things. Yep. Oh, and she has the exaggerated swagger of a teen in the early 2000s. That's genuinely her character. I never felt more disconnected with a character because there's nothing to her. They could have at least had good drama here. They set up great drama, and what they do with it, they just throw it into the waste paper basket. Oh, here we go. MJ thinks Peter is being weird because there's something wrong with Cheyenne. It's not explored. Even with Harry himself, it's not explored. There's not any good fights in this episode. There's not any standout moments. There's nothing well written here because this show refuses to try and give the characters any characteristics of being an interesting character. I didn't want to come into this show hating it, truly. But how can you feel things from these stories? What are these stories trying to make you feel? Because I feel nothing from them. The 90s show had heart. It made me resonate with Peter in a way that no other Spider-Man media has. Spectacular delivered some of the best storytelling, having touching moments, great character moments, and there's a ton of emotions that show will make you feel. It makes you happy, it makes you sad, it makes you feel for all the characters in a way that matters. But when I get to this show, I don't feel anything. Maybe I feel sad because this show could have been better, because it's clear that there was a lot of talent put into this. Lots of hardworking individuals did a ton of work in the CGI side of the show, a lot of things that hadn't even been done before, and I feel like there is a good show somewhere in here because they will have tiny moments that are good, and they feel like the characters, and it feels like there's a direction that it wanted to go, but it's filled with so much dumb stuff that they can't get to do it. So I truly do not blame the people making the show, because you can just feel that it was out of their control to make this show something great. I love how passionate the people are, and I respect the hell out of it. And I don't believe it is their fault, but this show isn't accomplishing anything for me so far.
Well, my reaction is always, would I want to watch this show? And as a fan of comics, and as a fan of Spider-Man, would this be something that I would have some respect for? And that was a question that we posed to ourselves each and every day as we were looking at the choices that we faced, with character design and with performance and even with stories as well.
What I also liked is that we were, you were putting something new on the air. I mean, from the first test that you showed us in animation, I hadn't seen this on the air, and I was like, wow, let's put something new on television. Everything looks exactly the same.
And for us, this is probably a good point to mention this. This is a computer animated show, but it is rendered in a 2D style. And at this point in time when this show has now aired, there's really nothing else like it on television. I'm hoping there'll be a lot more in the future, because we've kind of helped craft a new flavor that's going to be a really good tool for telling good stories in the future. But at the very beginning, we were showing 2D drawings and sketches to our clients at MTV and at Marvel, and also bosses over at Sony. And we were really asking for a lot of trust from them that our art direction was going to be something that was going to be worth looking at. Because in CG, you don't get to look at the final product until you've baked the whole cake and the frosting is on it. You can't just sort of look at a recipe list and say, oh, that's going to be pretty.
Yeah, tasting that cake for the first time is a very frightening moment.
But everyone loves working on Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
it's Spider-Man.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was really exciting about walking the halls of Mainframe Entertainment, and that is there's such a passion for the work, and everyone knew that what we were doing was really unique. There had been nothing like this on television, and we were just dying to get this to an audience. And that's another thing that was actually kind of difficult, is that we had such levels of secrecy on the show, because we had a responsibility to our client to not leak information about stories, not leak information, still images. The publicity for the series was something that had to be carefully managed, because we were working in coordination with the feature film of Spider-Man and so forth. So it was like, erase your desktop at the end of the day. Just you couldn't leave anything out.
Yeah. I mean, we had to be pretty confidential about what we were doing at work, even to our friends, especially to our friends.
Yeah, my friend's a huge Spider-Man fan.
Oh, exactly.
He was like, you got to get me in and look at some of this stuff.
No, I couldn't happen.
Screw you, buddy.
Like, we're all nerds at work, I'm sorry to say. Well, no, I'm pleased to say.
Thanks, Rex.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm a nerd, too. And, of course, nerds hang around nerds. And outside of work, our friends are all Spider-Man fans, too.
Yeah,
so.
in the cabin when I'm playing D&D, that's all we talk about.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Spider-Man and
But, yes, there's a
so you guys got a lot of points with the Nerd Brigade just by being involved with the show.
Hey, we have no shame about our nerddom.
But it's always about confidentiality.
Exactly. Shh.
But it was kind of a challenge, because it was the sort of thing you just wanted to run out and shout out and tell everybody, look what I'm working on, and look how
Not
cool
only
this
that,
is.
but we're really proud of the end product of every episode. I mean, like when we finish a show at Mainframe, it doesn't have any Foley, it doesn't have any music, no sound effects or anything, just the dialogue. But after we send it to Sony, and for the rare instances that we do get a final mix from you guys, hint, hint.
Well, actually, we weren't even allowed to send you back. You'd send me your final footage. I would edit it. We'd do the mix. We'd do the whole post process.
Right.
We'd add special effects and basically craft the final show. I was not even allowed to send a copy of that back to you guys.
Okay, I mean, we never, ever got it.
The fear was that somehow it would be copied in some unauthorized way and it would end up on the internet, and the whole big surprise of how cool this was would be blown.
Right.
So what we had to do is I literally had to bring tapes that I signed for that were in my custody, and then we would set them up at Mainframe and show the crew, and that's why we had those big crew screenings. And for me, it was probably the one of the high points of the whole series was coming up there and showing you guys the final product, something that many of you had slaved over for months at a time, and you finally got to see it finished.
I've got to hand it to you guys. Like whenever we considered every episode that we worked on our babies, because we put in so much time and effort. And when you send something like that off to another company to get re-edited, recut, and all that, we're just really apprehensive. But I gotta hand it to you guys. When we got the final products back, we were blown away every single time. The music, the sound, even the re-edits, they all made sense, and they made the product even better. And yeah, I just like to give you guys mad props for that.
Some Spider-Man shows have had me angry at least, and I felt something there. But this one, again, is just making me feel empty, and I hate being negative because I'm not usually negative, but there's no resemblance of a good show here. And that's not to taint the opinions of the people that like this show, because everyone has a different opinion, but I just don't personally think that it's making an impression. The only reason this episode gets a 3 and not a 1 is because there's a cool chase sequence at the beginning, and there's a couple of lines that I like. Again, this is an episode I see the potential, and it's sad I feel like they aren't using that. What if Harry thought Peter was being jealous and that's why he's being a jerk and confronts him about it? What if Cheyenne found out that Peter was Spider-Man? What if Cheyenne is using Harry in some way? What if Cheyenne had to leave because she doesn't want to put him in harm's way? I don't know, there's just something bland about this episode, and I wish they had done more with the concept. The trivia for this episode is the director of this episode, Alan Caldwell, designed Talon's tattoo. Talon steals a MTV Movie Award at the beginning of the episode. 20 concepts were designed before this style of the goggle was agreed upon for Talon's design. Talon's regular clothes was originally Mary Jane's outfit. Talon is played by Eve, a popular rapper, and she brought her dog to the recording studio. For this sequence, the actual blueprints are pre-production design packets. Jennifer Hale is in this episode as a speaker on a TV, where Cheyenne was trying to steal at, and she was Black Cat in the 90s show. And I'm assuming this was supposed to be a reference to her being Black Cat prior. Let's move on to the next episode. This episode begins with these thugs called pterodactyls, and they infiltrate this area with these diamonds that can power an X-ray laser, and the main guy wants to sell them to make the big bucks. Spider-Man stops them. He then tries to sell his photos to the Bugle. Jameson thinks Spider-Man was working with them. Peter then gets the idea to sell a video of the shooting, but he gets rejected. But on his way out, he runs into a girl named Mindy, an up-and-coming reporter. She gets her boss to sell his DVD and plans on giving her a special CD with unknown things on it. Like, we never know what's on it. He goes to give her the CD, but the building gets invaded by pterodactyls, and Peter has to try and protect the people inside without revealing his identity. He succeeds by jumping up to something above him and changing into Spider-Man, but realizes the thugs are gone and have left explosives behind. Spider-Man stops the explosives, and the thugs went back to the diamond because they think they killed Spider-Man, but Spider-Man stops them. Mindy tries to see if he's okay, and gives him a kiss as soon as he gets down from the building because they've been flirty the whole episode. MJ sees this and cries because they were supposed to see a movie that night, and in the entire episode she was getting mad that Peter wasn't expressing his feelings about her, even though they've kissed twice and 3 times if you're counting Spider-Man. And why is MJ upset anyway? Wasn't she kissing Spider-Man? Peter's a whole playboy. I'm gonna give this episode a 7 out of 10, which is weird because I have criticized the other episodes for not having an interesting villain, and this villain wasn't particularly interesting, but he didn't need to be. Not all villains need to be interesting, but all the other villains felt like they were trying to be interesting because of how much time they were putting into them. As we're with this one, he just feels like a thug. All of them just feel like thugs. The head one is a bit cooler since he tries to act smart, but still gets beaten easily. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This one wasn't trying to be dark just for the sake of it, or spending a lot of time on the villain just for them not to be interesting. This one is more of a scenario that is interesting unless you drag it out and make it boring. Daredevil Born Again. Still think it could have been handled better, and that's why it gets a 7, but I really enjoyed the character interactions in this episode. Indy is super fun and energetic, and she has this awkward, cute, fast-talking personality. Harry and MJ have some fun dialogue. Even Peter and Jonah have a fun little moment. Funnily enough, at the beginning of the episode, Harry, Mary Jane, and Peter are spying on people with binoculars and watching people make out. It's just so weird. It's funny because why are they doing this? They're just like making fun of them too. Is this what people do in college? They pull out some binoculars and watch people make out on campus? Like Peter and MJ's dynamic never makes sense because it's genuinely all over the place, and that continues here. It can get annoying because it doesn't make sense, but it's whatever. This one is truly just fine. The pterodactyl thugs went through 40 different iterations before the character design was finalized. The design for the backpack armor is based on Russian cosmonauts, which is cool because I forgot to mention they're Russian. The beams are inspired by those shots in the Ghostbusters animated series. The 3D model when Peter is talking to the boss at Empire 1 is a slightly modified J. Jonah Jameson. This Maximum Shock billboard is destroyed in Electro's episode. Next episode.
I've been reading a lot of Spider-Man comics since I've done this, because I have to talk about it all the time, you see. And it's great. It's a great dynamic to have a teenage character that's a superhero. I must say I was a little concerned about it. I didn't have great expectations for it when I went into audition because there's a glut of comic cartoons on TV, and most of them just aren't that interesting. They're kind of two-dimensional, they're sort of cheaply produced, and And so, I auditioned because it's a job, but I had no idea that the technical elements would be of such a high level.
People have done versions of our characters that weren't too true to the original comic book perception of the characters. And one of the reasons was because we had no control. We just sort of gave it to somebody who bought the license fee. We were unsophisticated in such matters, and they did jobs that were less than admirable as far as the interpretation of our characters. We are so fortunate now. I really have made it a point not to butt in as long as we have the best possible people doing the project. I had such confidence in the people who were working on the show, and after seeing the show, they more than exceeded my confidence.
The beginning of this episode starts with Spider-Man capturing a thug, and he's late for class. Classic Spidey, I love that. When class is over, he talks to Max Dillon, and he says you need a partner for the assignment they're working on, and the only partner left in this class is Christina. And, oh boy.
Hey.
Christina is that one kid in class you do not want to partner up with, because they are insane. The only reason I'd partner up with her is because she's a goth female, and I die when I see a goth female. Oh my god, I'm so down bad. Okay, Peter meets up with Christina in her room to discuss her experiment, but before they get started, she talks about her and Spider-Man are soulmates and has a whole journal of pictures of him.
It should have been me. It should have been me.
Anyway, she brings out her invention, which will be used for their project, and for some reason she also has an acid gun under her bed, but the project she brings is this thing that's supposed to read people's minds. She puts it on Peter and starts asking him questions. She actually successfully gets some of the questions right, but something goes wrong, and she gets, I guess, electrocuted in the head. She tells Peter to leave after this, and I'm surprised Peter didn't check up on her after this or anything, but then she starts hearing a voice in her head, and it's prompting her to open her Spider-Man notebook. And when she opens it, she sees Spider-Man talking to her, and he wants her to do everything he says. MJ had her mind wiped from the last episode and wonders why they never share their thoughts or feelings towards each other, and she thinks that's the problem. She has an idea. They're going to share personal information about each other, something small but deep, every single day. We go back to Christina, and this hallucination Spider-Man says that you're going to have to find the real him so they can be together, and he gives her a plan to put herself in danger so that Spider-Man can save her. Peter talks to Harry about the personal note thing, and he gives some pretty good advice actually. He tells him that what she wants on that paper is how you really feel about her. And of course Peter is being an idiot about showing his feelings towards her. It's not like they've kissed or anything, and it's not obvious that they like each other or anything. We then see Christina on a rooftop nearby and falling off of it. Peter's spider sense goes off, and Spider-Man saves her. Christina thinks that since he saved her, and she knew he was going to do it, she thinks that they're soulmates. Spider-Man madly tells her not to do that ever again and heads off. She talks to Book Spider-Man, and he tells her he doesn't have time to be saving careless girls and tells her to find another way to find him. Spider-Man starts saving people, thinking about what personal note he's going to give to MJ, and I just love how he's doing this while he's saving people because he's trying to deal with personal things while helping people. Great stuff here. He gets annoyed because he's got the coolest secret to tell her and he can't do it. I wish he contemplated on doing it because in the other shows, I liked when he was contemplating his choices. It just felt very human to do because we always contemplate our choices in life and he never does that in this show, unfortunately. She finds out by listening on a TV nearby that Peter must know Spider-Man because he's been taking videos of him and he always seems to be there when he shows up. She talks to Wayne, the coffee guy, and asks if he knows where Peter is. But he doesn't know, but he knows where his friend Harry went because he was just there. He points her in the direction of where Harry is. MJ and Peter give each other their notes about their personal secrets, and Peter reads hers, and hers was about when her parents were fighting, she would hide in her closet and pretend she was a stowaway on a ship. It was grimy and cold there, but she was happy because she wasn't stuck in the house. She starts reading his, and Peter tries to stop her, but she read it, and we skip over to her talking to Harry about it, and he puts that he's allergic to grouper, the fish.
She talked about a whole story when she was a kid. She heard her parents fight because we took that from the movie. I used to hide under the bed. We kept it all just like that.
Right.
And then when she reads Peter's, it says...
Well, I know in my first draft it said, I have to confess I get a secret thrill each time I accidentally catch a glimpse of your underwear.
What kind of animal are you?
Right, we
I don't think that made it.
We did change it because
That changed.
it made him seem, even though he's secretly like every other writer, he seemed a little perverted.
She expresses her anger to Harry since hers was way deeper than his. Harry then starts talking about kind of just like out of nowhere that he's just glad that she's not going back for Spider-Man, implying that he knew about the kiss in the first movie. Christina overhears their conversation with another invention that she has, that she can hear people from a distance. Mary Jane understands that he hates Spider-Man, so she said that's over, and Christina hears that there was something up with Spider-Man in her. She goes to photo Spider-Man and gets mad at him because she thinks he's in love with MJ, and she thinks that with enough determination, the heart can change. So Photo Spidey says that all she needs to do is remove the obstacle between them, which is MJ. Peter has a small sweet scene with Indy with him giving her more videos, and it feels like this was kind of added into the episode, but I like Indy's character, so I don't mind. And we also get more confirmation that Peter does like photography, and Indy even thinks if he keeps supplying her with enough footage, then he might become a famous photographer, which is weird because he's taking videos and not photos. Christina kidnaps MJ because she thinks if he takes her out, Spider-Man will confess his undying love for her. They go up to this building where Spider-Man meets them to try and save MJ. Don't know how he knew they would be here, but who cares? Spider-Man tries convincing her that the toaster oven contraption head thing did something to her mind. She doesn't believe that, she just knows that they're soulmates. I believe it. She forces him to hook up the wires to his head, and MJ thinks she's just projecting her own feelings onto him. So she asks something she can't prove right or wrong, which doesn't make sense because there's no way you can prove that, but she has a bit of mental problems. She says she knows who Spider-Man is and can't believe he's so average and unexciting. MJ punches her and Spider-Man tries to take her acid gun away, but when he does it, it fires onto this window part and it starts to fall. Spider-Man catches it, but Christina starts going down the elevator with MJ as her ongoing hostage. Christina uses her acid gun to shoot the lines of the other elevators next to her with people inside it, so it delays some more time for Spider-Man. I'm a bit confused on her plan right now because there's no way she's getting away, and I thought she was trying to kill MJ. MJ tries to take the gun out of Christina's hands, and it shoots above the elevator they're on, and it starts spreading to the wires above. They begin to fall. Spider-Man gets MJ out of there, and he grabs the elevator with his webbing, but as she tries shooting him, she shoots the webbing and falls to her death. I'm kidding, she's still alive. But I kind of wish she did die, not because I didn't like her, but imagine what this could mean for Spider-Man. You know, this girl was clearly mentally ill and she needed help, and when Spider-Man couldn't save her, he could blame himself because Christina was trying to show him her invention and it completely indirectly caused her to die. And when he notices her falling on purpose to try and make him come to him, he tries to offer her help instead by taking to her mental institute, but she doesn't go in, and then she starts trying to kill MJ. And with him trying to help her, he fails in doing so. Or even a better alternative is that he's so focused on the note for MJ that he ignores her mental well-being, and then when she kidnaps MJ, she died instead. I feel like they could have made this a good episode for people with mental problems, instead of just playing it off like she's a psycho emo girl with issues. I don't know, it was 2003, I'm not sure cartoons were doing that type of stuff yet, but I think since they had the option to, and this was made for a more mature audience, I think they could have pulled this off pretty well. She's in one of those hospital beds that they drag you in. I'm not sure what they're called, but she's on one of those. It reveals that his identity is Wang the coffee guy. MJ questions if he's actually Wang, but then she says something weird.
At least I know which secret you're keeping.
I'm sorry, but this makes no sense unless she knew he was Peter, because her line delivery doesn't sound like this is a joke, and it doesn't come off as a joke, so it's really weird, but I like to think that she knows, and that earlier in the episode, that's what she wanted him to put on the cards, and the way he feels about her. I think it would have been cool to have small hints that she knows. She just wants to wait till he's ready to share, like Danny's sister and Danny Phantom. Anyway, Peter and her at the coffee food place on campus, and MJ starts checking Wong's hand to see if he might be Spider-Man.
This is interesting to me. This guy, Wang, the coffee guy, was a guy based on a guy I've seen at my local drugstore, and I read his name tag wrong. His name isn't Wang, it's Mong, but we were stuck with Wang, and he's immortalized in this character.
And for us, the dynamic was it was almost like a police sketch where we actually never saw the guy or a picture, but you sat there and you described him in great detail.
I'm describing my Long's drug clerk, and he turns out to be a character in Spider-Man.
MJ talks to Peter on how Christina was a crazy psycho stalker, and she then realizes that's what she is to Peter because she forced that game on him. MJ, those are two completely different scenarios. You cannot compare them. He tells her that she didn't force anything, and that there are just some things that he's not ready to share, not just with her, but with anyone. She hopes that one day Peter will let her in, and wants to remain friends. They are some friends who just kiss from time to time. I think that is so funny, like she'll kiss him randomly, and then I guess Peter has like some Superman 2 powers, and just mind wipes her with a kiss. Alright, that's canon now. She loses her memories when they kiss. They probably kissed before this episode, and that's why she's not upset anymore in this episode that he kissed Indy. You know what's also funny and supports my theory? Indy doesn't talk about the kiss or them being a couple in this episode or anything. It's canon now. It's canon. This episode is over. They are friends with benefits. Okay, there's a lot I actually like here, but there's some things that I didn't like. Like, I didn't like that they treated Christina like a psychomaniac. Like I mentioned, she just seemed mentally unwell. I didn't like, but kind of like, was them sharing their secrets with the notes. Like, just be adults and tell each other your feelings for one another. It's like we're in middle or high school, but she wants to do that because Peter's having a hard time with saying how he feels. So she is essentially giving him an opening to be more open with her, but he's insanely and clueless and writes about how he's allergic to grouper the fish. I thought that was funny because MJ's full on confessed a deep personal thing in her life and he wrote that. It's good and it's bad at the same time. I do like how he was thinking of what to write while helping people. I kind of wish he saved Christina, who was trying to get his attention, and like I said, he's just so focused on the letter that he ignores her. Again, I just think there's some missed opportunities to flesh the story out a bit more. I give this one a 5 out of 10. I don't know how to feel about this one because there's not much here other than mentally ill girl gets into an accident, which makes her super obsessive over Spider-Man. And Spider-Man has to try and save MJ, and then the side plot with Peter and MJ. It's truly nothing special. I like that Christina can build these like high-tech things and she could be intelligent. And I feel like this could have been good because Christina isn't someone that needs to be super thought out unlike the other villains. Besides the last one, it can just be a story about a girl who needs help. This was a story about a psycho girl going crazy, and it just doesn't work as well because I don't care about Christina. You know, I think they're having a hard time making the villain of the episode someone with complexion. And you know, it works if you're making a Saturday morning cartoon, but even Spider-Man the Animated Series, which is a Saturday morning cartoon, at least made the attempt to do that. Not all of their characters had that, but a lot of them did. I think that's this show's biggest weak point. You don't go up to a Spider-Man fan and ask what's your favorite villain from any animated Spider-Man series, and no one's picking a villain from this show. Oh yeah, Turbojet. I like him because he's a prick and selfish. I like the Lizard most because he's a jerk scientist. I like the girl from the last episode because she's uninteresting. If I asked you that question, what's your chances of picking someone from the show? You can give any reason for the other villains from the different shows and you would know because they were special. And they had something that made them special to you. Maybe you like them because they're badass. Maybe they have something that related to you. Maybe you like a specific personality trait about them. Maybe you just like them because they had a cool design. None of this can apply to this show so far, and that's terrible because they just feel uninteresting. And the fact is, as I've been saying a lot, is that they could be interesting. Maybe that's not what this show is trying to accomplish. But the thing is, I'm feeling that a lot from this show because a show doesn't have to focus on that if they don't want to, but it feels like they are. Look at how much time we spent with Shikata, almost to learn nothing about her. Look at how much time we spent with Christina, only for us to learn that she's not mentally okay. Look at how much time all these villains are being built up in these episodes. At least give us a hooking point to the character. Make us care. And you don't need a backstory for that. You don't need to make a super interesting character for that. But the fact is, I don't care about these villains. This is using the villain of the week type format, and that works if you're making the villain good, and actually the villain doesn't even need to be good, like the one from the last episode that I, can't remember his name. But they weren't trying to make him a good villain, and I think it worked fine enough for the story they were telling. The second thing that holds this show down, in my opinion, is the main characters, unfortunately. And it just doesn't feel like too much is happening with them. I've started to care less and less about MJ and Peter being a couple because they are being children about what they want. And also it seems like whenever they get somewhere, it doesn't matter. I like the dynamic with everyone kind of picking on each other and them legitimately just being good friends. Like they'll talk about their problems sometimes and I like that. But it's just most of the time it doesn't amount to anything. I truly don't know what the show is trying to do. The characters don't evolve, the villains aren't interesting, and the story is suffering majorly because of this. Everything relies on your characters, and when they aren't really given any depth, it just kind of loses its spark. I think they just relied on the Spider-Man movie being a success, so they just wanted to get this out quick, and since it's Spider-Man, people will watch it. This is another thing where I just don't blame the people working on the show. I blame the people that didn't care because there's moments here where I can feel that they cared about this character. Like for instance, this episode Spider-Man fighting crime while he's thinking about what to write to MJ. Or in that one episode where Peter keeps missing MJ's play because of the Kingpin plot. Like these are pure Spider-Man moments to me. This will make my point clear because there's a new CGI Spider-Man show that came out like this one, and we see Peter having these moments and we see what Peter feels in certain moments and we have an actual connection to Peter and his cast. Scorpion wasn't an interesting villain in that show, but it doesn't matter because he didn't need to be. That's what I think this show should have been doing, but also have focus on some of those villains. Okay, I'm done giving my thoughts about why this isn't working because I would like to see what else this show has in store because who knows, things could change. but we're 7 episodes in, so probably not. The trivia for this episode is that there are some blueprints, and these blueprints are actual designs created by Sony for use by Mainframe, the show's animation house. The covers to Christina's notebook was drawn by the episode's director. They make a note in the DVD extras that the comic dynamic shifted because in the comics, MJ's the one more avoidant of the relationship as did the show, where Peter's the one more avoidant to MJ. MJ is apparently reading Romeo and Juliet. The acid gun Christina has is based on a device found in the executive producer's garage. The chocolates Peter drops have the lead artist's name on them, Hartman. The insane laugh Christina does was recorded 8 months after the show was done for some reason. Next episode.
Funny thing, when I first began the character, I've been asked so often, how did I feel? Did I ever expect that today there'd be major motion pictures and great television animated series and so forth? All I hoped was that somebody would buy the magazine and I could keep my job and I'd keep getting my salary. And I mean, in a million years, neither I nor anybody at the company could have thought that we'd be doing an interview for a DVD. We didn't know what a DVD was. We didn't have DVs. In fact, the reason my fingers are so stinted, we were always scratching things on the walls of caves in those days.
You know all of those rants I just had about the villains? Well, this villain changes that formula. This villain I felt like they did interesting things with, and I can't wait to talk about it, so let's get into it. This episode starts off with Doug Reisman, a popular kid at school with his friends who have kidnapped a kid named Max Dillon. Max Dillon is a loser who's trying to fit in, but in reality, the other people are the losers. They call themselves the Sigma Chi. The Sigmas have captured Max and plan to drop him off in the Bronx somewhere. They get out to get a hot dog, but Max ends up starting the car and driving off. He ends up getting knocked out by hitting his head on the wheel, and Spider-Man comes to the rescue. He saves Max, and Spider-Man wonders who did this to him. What's funny is the Sigma group somehow appears even though they were far away, and also it would be very easy for the police who found who did this to him. Look at the license plate. Even if it's in the concrete, they would take it out to find who did this to him. Peter's late to class, and we see him having to change to go back to class. Peter, Harry, and MJ have some fun dialogue as always, and they are talking about a party happening at the Sigma's house. The Sigmas, I hate this. They invite Peter, but they know he never comes to these sort of things, so they don't expect him to be there. But he says that he'll be there, he'll just be late. I love that they joke on him because they don't think he's going to come. Just a great interaction with them. Peter goes to get some coffee on campus, and Max Dillon ends up there too. Peter and Max talk about what happened after they see the accident that happened on TV with him. Peter and him talk for a bit, talking about what happened, but Max doesn't know what happened. He just knows that he got jumped in an alley on campus. Max feels like college is just high school all over again. He sees Doug Reisman and looks up to him because he's quote-unquote cool. Max talks to Doug trying to get into the Sigma Club. Doug tells him to come by the Sigma house for the party that night. Peter tries to get Max to go, but Max doesn't want to go away because he looks up to Doug. Doug asks if there is a problem, and Peter says that the problem was just starting to go away. Doug and his stupid Sigmas start trying to punch Peter, but Peter does an insane jump out of the way, and he's definitely not Spider-Man. Peter thinks he's doing too well because he has a secret identity to keep, so he lets them punch him. Peter and Harry talk about Doug for a bit, and then he just randomly brings up that Spider-Man murdered his father, and I'm not gonna lie, it's funny every time he brings it up because it's so out of place. We skip to the party. We see Max just kind of awkwardly in the corner, and he also starts awkwardly dancing. That's me at parties for sure. A girl looks his way, and she looks like she's eyeing him, but Max gets called away into
the inner circle of the Sigma Brotherhood Council.
Oh boy, this is gonna be something. I would die to be on that council, okay? Max follows the Sigmas into this basement, and it's a cult, and they see... I'm sorry, I can't keep it together. Max follows the Sigmas into this basement, and it's a cult, and they seeing if he's worthy, and they claim he's not worthy to be part of the Sigma Brotherhood because he was actually tricked by the bullies, and they shoot paintball guns at him, which I would imagine still hurts a lot, especially if you aren't wearing any gear. Max leaves with all the people making fun of the paint on him, and he hopes they all rot and die. He leaves upset, thinking he's stupid for thinking the other guys liked him. Max sees his name when looking up at this billboard, but when he climbs up, it's just an electric billboard that says Maximum Shock, which we have seen in the previous episodes. Max throws a beer bottle at the sign, and it electrocutes him, and explodes, and he turns into Electro. Which it seems they went with the Ultimate Spider-Man comics design because the other one is just insanely goofy. Max starts heading to the party, he causes all the lights in the house to turn off, and is about to attack everyone inside. We go to Peter talking to himself on the ceiling about if he should go to the party, and he actually makes an X-Men reference.
I bet the X-Men get to go to parties.
Again, would this be Fox's X-Men since it's originally the Raimi trilogy? It's funny because what if it was all connected into this universe? That'd be funny. He wants to take the night off and have fun, but he has to be Spider-Man. He hears screams somehow coming from all the way at the Sigma house. Electro starts attacking Doug, and the girl that looked at him tries to stop him but gets electrocuted. Electro blames Doug for this, making him more angry, and he kills him, and I'm not gonna lie, it's the funniest death ever. He doesn't make a sound. I just think it's funny. Spider-Man arrives at the scene and he starts fighting Electro with some alright action scenes. I like the way Spider-Man moves in this fight, and I like the mood the fight has. There's this light coming off Electro, and you can see Spider-Man in this light. It's well done. I also really mess with Electro's design. I think they did a pretty good job here. He has a zombie kind of look to him. Electro starts attacking everyone, imagining they're all Doug. Spider-Man starts beating him up before he lands another punch. He notices that it's Max Dillon. Spider-Man tries to reason with him, telling him that he can't do this to innocent people, but he believes that no one is innocent, which is weird to me, but edgelord, I guess. Electro pushes him to the side and starts attacking the civilians again, and with no other options, Spider-Man tackles him to the ground and says,
I know what it's like.
This scene I feel really works, and I'm happy that it does work the way it does. Peter is a victim to bullying as well. He's a nerd who gets pushed around by Flash and his friends, so he would understand Max's frustrations. I like that he was able to connect to Max in this way. Greg Weisman, who created Spectacular Spider-Man, had said this.
What makes a compelling villain? You know, we see Norman in this episode, and he's finally unmasked. And is it? Some people are like, oh, it just takes time to build that compelling villain. But what is it about villains that just make... What makes them so fun to write, and what makes them compelling to bring to the screen?
We'd written this question down. What to you guys makes a compelling hero or villain in general? In this show, other works you've worked on, or in general, what do you think?
I mean, I have these theories about what makes a compelling villain, and for me, part of it is that it's got to be in some way a reflection of the hero that the villain's up against. I mean, you have to find an aspect. You know, it's the whole idea of, in the purest terms, of the evil twin. You know. And obviously not every character is going to be the evil twin, right? But in some way, you need to find that piece of the hero that you're reflecting, that this character, but for the grace of God, so to speak, go I, that you could see how, in some way, how Peter could have turned out like Doc Ock, or how Peter could have turned out like Norman Osborn, how there's an aspect of every one of those villains in Peter Parker, and that's where they connect. And that's where the danger is. It's less about who can punch harder and more about, how corruptible are we as human beings? How can we lose empathy? How can we lose a focus on what's right and wrong? How did things turn out the way they do? And to me, obviously a cool look, and Spidey has one of the greatest rogues galleries in terms of the looks of his villains as frankly any character out there. But all that stuff contributes. But at the end of the day, what makes a villain really feel like a good opposite number to the hero is some connection that they have, some similarity they have, something that is reflected in the hero.
What he says here has always stuck with me because he's right. We think of these villains as just being evil, but I think that looking in a way of how that hero could have turned out like any of these guys puts a bigger perspective on villains for me. I don't think every villain needs to have that. As I said before, some villains can just be evil for the sake of it. And I love that route too, but it's definitely an interesting route to go down because we have such a connection to Peter Parker. Peter could have turned out like Max. Peter could have used the powers he was given to beat up these bullies, but he doesn't. He uses them to help people. It's like the scene where he just lets himself get beat up because he's not using his powers to show off. He's not using these powers to do bad things with them. Peter could literally be one of the biggest threats in the world, but he chooses not to because of Uncle Ben. And I think that just resonates with a lot of people because if we didn't have certain people in our lives, who would we become? I think about this question often. I'm insanely lucky to have certain people in my life because they made me a better person. They showed me that I can do anything. They believed in me. I'm just insanely appreciated of all those people, first of all. But I don't think I would have been a good person without them. And I think that goes for a lot of people too. If Peter didn't have Uncle Ben, what would he have become? I don't think he'd be saving lives unless you're Tom Holland Spider-Man. I think he would use those powers in a selfish way. Sorry, I'm getting all twisted up in this, but I just find it insanely interesting what makes us as human beings. Because we have so many questions about what's right, what's wrong, and endless amounts of questions that could go on. And I have these deeper talks in these videos sometimes because I just like giving my thoughts about them. And this is about the only time I can do it, so there you go. Getting back to the episode, Peter finds an electric transformer. that I guess supplies electricity. I don't know. I don't know much about electricity, but he sticks that cable into him, and he's now traveling around his electricity and everything. Everyone starts clapping like the man of the house didn't just die, and Harry just says,
"Idiots. You have no idea what he really is. Murderer."
The cops come to talk to Spider-Man and actually call him a mutant freak, so it shows you that mutants aren't accepted in this universe, like every other universe for some reason. Spider-Man gets away, and Spider-Man perches on one of those things that Batman stands on in those silly little games, and he unmasks himself looking distraught. Peter, MJ, and Harry are at Doug Reisman's grave. Should have put Sigma Leader on there, and they talk about the incident. Peter reveals he did show up, but he couldn't find them, and I like that too since he was technically there. MJ and Harry leave, and Peter monologues about how choosing the side of good doesn't necessarily make you a hero. Not with everyone. I'm assuming this was because he was saving people from Max, but Max didn't deserve what happened to him. The episode ends, and this is getting a 9 out of 10. I like this one. I like it a lot, actually. This is what the show has been missing, a compelling villain. Maybe that's why they made this the first episode, because this is probably going to be the strongest one. I feel for Max. He was a bit of a jerk, but he didn't deserve what happened to him. All he wanted was to be accepted, and he got shitted on because the Sigmas didn't like him. So now he hates everyone because the world didn't accept him. I might be looking too deep into that, but I think that's what they were going for. Max is an example of society failing him, and now they have to pay the price for that. Obviously, this is a note for bullying as well, which is crazy because I feel like we see more of that now with shootings, unfortunately. And I think that signifies that we should all just be kinder to each other. Some people just don't care or regard other people's feelings. I think we've all been a jerk once in our life, even if it was for a moment, but if we can look back on that and just grow, we'd be good. But most people, and I remember in high school, people would just be jerks for no reason. I've had a couple encounters where I just despise some people, and everyone has that because some people, man, are just filled with hate. It's dumb. I wish I had more to say about this episode because I really enjoyed it, but I don't have any problems with it. I feel like this should have been what the show was. Interesting villain, tie it in with Peter's B-plot, have a good time with the characters. That's what the show should have strived to be. The trivia for this episode is the train tracks in the beginning was inspired by Chicago's E-Train. Max was originally supposed to land in the Hudson Bay instead of concrete, but they found that wet concrete was easier to animate. The original model for Max Dillon had more zits. The slow motion scene was used to remain consistent with the first Spider-Man movie. The railing in Peter and Harry's apartment blends from Spider-Man to Green Goblin. The design for Electro's star pattern is created by the paintball hits. Max was originally going to get hit by a car when he's walking out of the party. It is said that Electro originally had a yellowish hue, but he looked too much like a zombie, but he still looks like a zombie. Seattle Space Needle makes a cameo in the Manhattan skyline. That's it. Next episode.
You know, the other thing with Spider-Man that we faced that was mentioned briefly is we had to make sure that we maintained his movement across the series. So right from development, what we did is everybody knows how Spider-Man moves. We had to ensure in our lead animators to keep the movement the same, and we followed that across every episode. We have versions of Spider-Man saved out his poses. You'll always see him posed 99% the same in every show. We need to maintain a level of conformity. He all of a sudden can't start moving like anybody else except who he is.
And, you know, in terms of the poses, we started with the comic books again. We had pages and pages of reference material. We pulled what we thought were some of the strongest images from the comics, and those images were pinned to the walls above animators' desks.
I'm going to just quickly go over this one because just not too many things happen in it. Flash Thompson has a new tutor, and we learn this tutor is an evil scientist with smart juice that makes you smart, but he's still trying to perfect it. He sends out 2 thugs with the smart juice to go gather money that he can use for the experiment, and I guess he's been doing this for a while. Spider-Man catches the thugs, but they instantly are bailed out. They end up encountering Spider-Man again, but they actually outsmart him this time. Peter notices that Flash has the same bruising that the thieves had, and it could explain why he's been acting a lot smarter too. So he goes to investigate. He tries to talk to him about his tutor as Peter, but Flash has no interest in talking with him, and so Peter changes into Spider-Man since Flash looks up to him, just like he does in the comics. But Flash doesn't tell him much. He just tells him his name, which is Dr. Zeiner. Spidey tries to help him, but he declines. Peter gets a call from Flash later in the day saying that he needs help. Dr. Zeiner's serum is becoming fatal, so they need a smart person to, I don't know, I guess make the serum work because smart brainwaves. It's a bit unclear. Spider-Man comes and he just tells him that Peter sent him. They trap Spider-Man in one of the chairs that they were using for the injections, and they get him with a tranquilizer. Flash frees Spider-Man, but Spider-Man is a bit woozy. Even when he tries to shoot a web, it goes all over the place, which I actually really like that detail since he's got organic webs, so the tranquilizer is affecting that area in a different way. Spider-Man beats the thugs, and Flash gets taken hostage by Dr. Zeiner. Spider-Man attaches a webcam to the back of Flash before he escapes. Spider-Man tracks Zeiner down with the help of Indy because she was doing a story on this, which I'll go over a bit after the episode. and Spider-Man fights Zyner in this train, and it's probably the coolest sequence in the show. I love how this looks because the dark atmosphere just works perfectly for this scene, and the Spider-Man in the dark always just looked better. He stops Zyner and takes Flash back to the lab as Peter and cures him. Peter tries to get a thank you from Flash, but Flash tells him it was Spider-Man who truly helped him, and he goes back to his normal self. Then the episode is over. I'll give this one a 4, not too much happened in it. I almost had gone over everything. The plot is weird because we don't know anything about Zyner and why he's doing this. Zyner is just here and doing things just because. It was nice to see Flash in this episode. Wish we could have seen him more. Maybe he could start developing a friendship with Peter since they're in college now. That would have been cool, and they could have slowly brought him into the main cast. There's a couple of funny moments with Peter and Indy in this episode. Indy says she needs him to swing over to Empire 1 because she has something hot and juicy for him, and he gets caught off guard and almost drops his phone. And she says it'll make it worth his while, and he starts sliding off the building he's on. I love that stuff. I thought it was really funny. Then when we meet her, she was just talking about the two biker thugs and wondering how they got so smart. And it's funny because they're like having two different conversations, and she just stops him for a second and is like, "What are you talking about?" Peter is trying to talk about their relationship, and Indy is trying to talk about work. She did say she's available to him anytime after hours, which is good for you, Peter. Then later in the episode, he calls her about the location of the place where Flash has been taken to, and they do a parallel with him being interested in the thugs this time, and she's the one thinking this time about a relationship. It's a fun scene. I like it a lot. Dr. Zoner is played by Jeffrey Combs, who has done a ton of roles. I know him best for doing the Rat King in the 2012 TNMT show, Brainiac in Injustice 2, The Question from JLU, and the leader from EMH. He's also from something called Reanimator, and that's important because the green liquid that he gives Flash is a homage to Reanimator. That's legitimately the whole episode, so let's move on. The next episode is pretty much a mess trying to explain because it's such a weird plot in this episode. We're introduced to Silver Sable, the mercenary, and it's a plot about her trying to kill this international terrorist, and he's trying to get access to the president, which I guess means he'll hold him hostage or something. They actually make it a bit unclear. But the whole episode is Spider-Man trying to stop Sable from murdering him because he doesn't know that the guy is a terrorist. Peter originally thought it was the mayor because she was trying to blow up the car with him in it. Peter records the meeting with the mayor and the terrorist before the attack, and Sable wants this footage because there could be incriminating evidence on it, so she starts looking for the footage, and she ends up kidnapping Peter's friends, but everyone made it out okay. Spider-Man stops Sable and the terrorist, and that's the episode. Yeah, not too much to say here. It gets a 4 out of 10. I just didn't care much about Sable or the plot. Sable wasn't interesting in this story. She was just kind of What's funny is Peter didn't even know there was something incriminating on his footage till Sable came looking after him. All you could confirm from the footage was that Sable was trying to kill him, which who cares because you're a mercenary, right? Isn't that her whole thing? So why do you even need to go after Peter? What gave this a 4 was all the Peter stuff this episode because it would have been lower without it. Essentially, Peter and Indy are officially together, and MJ finds out and accepts that they are just friends, and she wants to meet her and get to know Indy. But her jealousy side comes through because some people just can't help but be jealous, even if they don't want to feel that. It's just human feelings. I like all of that, and she tells Peter at the end of the episode how jealous she was, and that just wasn't right, but gets cut off by Indy coming downstairs, which means they most likely had intercourse. I say intercourse because YouTube scares me with their stupid policies. Genuinely scared to say any bad words or anything on here without beeping it. Indy's always a great character. She has such a charm that MJ doesn't have, which I feel like she could have. Her main personality trait is liking Peter, and that's just not an MJ I like. MJ finds fulfillment in Peter in times of need. They both rely on each other, but loving him isn't her sole personality trait. She wants to be a stage actor or a reporter, you know? I just wish more was going on with her than Peter, because she just feels very one note. So basically Indy equals best girl. One thing that was funny in this episode, when everyone was hanging out together, Harry says in his head,
2 women, both into Peter. If he plays his cards right. Nah.
That made me laugh out loud because I feel like this is something my friends would say, which again establishes that Peter and Harry dynamic, which has been so great. This is the one I feel like I buy the most, which is weird since it's such an obscure show. I do like the Spectacular one as well, but nothing has beaten this one for me so far. I need to catch up with the new Ultimate Spider-Man run because I was enjoying their dynamic in that too. Trivia is that this guy, his name is Buzzcut. They used real martial artists that were motion captured for his movements. Sable's costume is a reworked version of Talon's costume. Next episode.
Our natural first choice was right in front of us. We've been looking at comic books, John Romita Jr.'s work, John Romita Sr., McFarlane. A number of great artists have supported the Spider-Man stories over the years, and for us, one of the first steps was just to put all that stuff in front of us. and see what we reacted well to, see what we liked. For example, Todd McFarlane's design for the spider webs. Beautiful. I love that sort of knotted spaghetti look, and we tried to emulate that as we made choices for our series. Some of the work that Mark Bagley did with the youthful qualities of the character of Peter Parker, that gangly 17-year-old body, and immediately we knew that was a direction that we wanted to follow through on. We had a lot of good source material from the comics, and we wanted to build on that.
The beginning episode sees two young adults, I think maybe teens, hanging out at this abandoned electrical warehouse, or whatever it's called, and they hear a strange noise and are about to be sucked in and killed by this fan. Spider-Man comes to save the day, and they tell him they would love to help him, but they're leaving. He doesn't understand, and they tell him that there's a ghost in there. Spider-Man, for some reason, doesn't believe them because how would they even get into this situation? Like, clearly something happened. Everyone leaves, and it's revealed to be Electro that caused this, and they try to pull off a scare factor, but it's early 2000 CGI, so it doesn't scare anyone. Sally and MJ are in class, and Sally gets this message on her computer telling her to ask her who got the highest score on this test they're about to take. Sally asks, and they again try to spook you here, and it's Max Dillon who got the highest score. This other guy that's sitting next to them says that Max is weird, and Sally angrily storms off. MJ tells her to cut her some slack because Sally is the last person Max quote-unquote connected to. They shared about a 5-second scene with them looking at each other and her getting electrocuted by him. They had a real connection. One I could only hope for. Getting absolutely electrocuted by my girl. Sally, which I just noticed might possibly be a reference to Sally Averill in the comics, who is more notably in the Spectacular Spider-Man show, but I doubt that this show had done that kind of research, so I just assume it's a random girl named Sally. But anyway, Sally starts taking notes on her voice recorder because MJ uses her notes sometimes, and she listens to her read them out loud. And Max is in the TV, my new favorite channel. Wait, that's not Max. That's not Max. Turn it off. He basically tells her that he's getting stronger every day, and soon he'll be able to reach out and touch her. Max, buddy, that is sexual assault. Max starts following the teacher through the electric signs and things in the area. Max appears in front of her and starts electrocuting her and brings her to the maximum shock sign where he was turned into Electro and starts electrocuting her and is experimenting on her for something. Peter sees his teacher's briefcase on the ground and immediately assumes the worst and instantly changes into Spider-Man. I don't understand why they had to make this scene so weird. Like, it's New York City, right? Someone should have seen this woman getting electrocuted and Spider-Man could have heard the screams of the people being scared. Or since Electro is very bright, Spider-Man can swing by and see them. I feel like there's a ton of different ways to not make this awkward on how he finds Electro, but of course they went for the most crazy approach. Anyway, Spider-Man webs up Max's power supply line, so he cuts off his electricity, and we get this scene.
Oh. Don't go. Come on. Don't go.
And she died. I'm kidding, she's alive. The original plan was that she did die, which explains the heartbeat flatline, which I don't understand why they didn't just kill her here. Like, sometimes I feel like this show is afraid to go too dark sometimes for some reason. And I think that was because if a parent came in on any teen watching this, they wouldn't allow them to watch it because death is bad. Peter and the gang get caught up on the situation, and Sally comes up and says that Max is stalking her and she is freaking out. And honestly, who wouldn't be? She gives MJ the Chem Lab Notes disc, and she starts listening to it and she hears everything that happened with Max. Spider-Man figures out where Electro is because I think he found out where the highest electrical voltage is around. I don't know, it's fictional stuff. But it's the same warehouse from the beginning of the episode because they didn't want to have to design a whole new set. Spider-Man tells him to stay away from Sally, and he gets mad and leaves. Sally ends up turning off all her lights and unplugging her TV, so Max doesn't try to get to her. But Max does anyway since he can travel through electricity. Sally, you are so stupid. MJ shares her information with Peter and Harry. They notice that he was talking backwards, so they put the disc in and start playing it backwards. Max says that he's lonely and wants Sally, but for them to be together, he has to test something on someone, and that's what he did to the teacher. They figure out he's trying to make Sally into an electrical being just like him, and now he's going to do it on Sally. Peter says that they are going to need Spider-Man's help, and of course Harry hates that, but Peter says he's also going to need a high voltage storage container, and Harry can get one from Oscorp. They know where Max is because they realize they are in a CGI world, so they reuse locations, and they all come to the warehouse, or they found it because his test run failed because he didn't have enough electrical charge, and there's only one place in the entire city where he can get that charge, and it happens to be that warehouse. Electro has Sally trying to make her into an Electro, and we find out why she's the one for him.
You smiled at me.
She will never smile at anyone again. Once a girl smiles at you, It's true love, folks. I think this is such a funny reason. It's supposed to be sad because Max was lonely, but this is insanely funny. Imagine doing all this because she smiled at you. Bro is down horrendous. He's just like me. Harry and MJ arrive for some reason. I'm not actually sure why. Spider-Man brings the high voltage storage container, but Electro ends up melting it into the floor. So Spider-Man tries to get him with the storage container to try and put him in there, but now he can't reach Max. Spider-Man decides to use himself as a way to get Max into the container, and this worked. And when Spider-Man is on the ground, Harry helps him up, saying,
I tried to help, but
I think that's a great scene. I'll talk about that in a moment, but they learn Electro is about to bust with his electrical juices, so they need to get rid of him. So Spider-Man throws him into the water, and he explodes. Peter and Harry talk at the end of the episode, reflecting on everything that's happened, and Peter talks about how the teacher is going to be alright, and Harry says thanks to you-know-who, and Harry doesn't know what to think anymore about Spider-Man. I actually really like this. This Harry would have gone down such a different path than the Raimi Harry, which is interesting to me because it feels natural for this Harry since Spider-Man has been helping him out in a ton of situations. I think it's been 4 now, and that would leave him clueless because why would he help him but kill his father? It's interesting because what if they wanted to go the Green Goblin route with this Harry too? How would they get there? I just like Harry way more in the show because he seems more reasonable than the Raimi Harry. Like, Raimi Harry wouldn't even give Peter a chance to explain what happened. Instead, he just tries killing him immediately, and it just felt forced. I think the way they handled it here would have given them more interesting ways to make his Goblin story one of the most tragic, since we've really gotten to know this Harry, and we see how much Peter and him connect. I think it could have made for some great drama between them, and especially MJ. I'll give this episode a 2 out of 10. I just didn't care for this episode. Max wasn't as interesting as we first saw him. He just didn't want to be alone, and that would have been good if they actually put more thought into that concept.
You smiled at me.
I think they could have pulled off this story so well, and it just fell flat to me. Maybe because they spent so much time on how he wants to make Sally an Electro person, or the trying to be a creepy early 2000s horror they were trying to pull off. The story is simple at heart, which isn't bad, but again, isn't executed in a way that I found interesting. There's not much that happens in the actual episode. MJ and Harry were there to give information that we already knew. Sally isn't an interesting character at all, and all we really know about her is that she smiled at Max, and that's not good. I really dislike this one because it was just boring, and the fact that Max was their most interesting character, and it feels like he was wasted here, is just so unfortunate. It always feels like the show is taking the least interesting route, which is just sad because there's so much they could be doing. The little Easter eggs in this episode is that Spider-Man's camera was modeled after the producer's voice recorder. Harry speaks Italian a little bit in this episode, but he says it wrong. He was trying to talk to this foreign exchange student, and that dialogue was translated by the audio engineer on the spot. The show's other foreign dialogue was translated by professors at UCLA. Sally's Mainframe Boys poster is a parody of the Backstreet Boys. Alright, let's get into the last 2 episodes, which is a 2-parter.
Well, Spider-Man has evolved in many different ways. See, originally I started writing him 1,000,000 years ago, but since then, I can't even count how many other writers have written the stories, how many other artists have drawn them. Now, as you can imagine, every time a new writer takes over the series, he will put his imprimatur on it. He'll give it his style. The artist will always give it their style. So over the years, he's changed slightly, but he's never deviated from the basic concept that he has to be a realistic, believable, empathetic, heroic character.
The beginning of this episode begins with the superpowered twins being taken to prison, and from the police officer's dialogue, they are extremely dangerous and have mental telekinetic powers, but these powers are being blocked because they are stuck with these syringes that knock them out, I guess. The police vehicle gets hijacked, and the syringes come off of them, and they make the cop shoot the other cop. And they'll let a person die like that, but not by them just electrocuting them to death, which is weird. Oh wait, they already did that. The twins escape the vehicle and go into a different vehicle, and Spider-Man starts chasing the police van, since his spider sense warned him of danger from the van. They get him to shoot at people, and Spider-Man stops the police van, but for some reason just knows that there's something wrong with the other van, and he finds the twins. There's something weird with his spider sense in this show because it's very overpowered. In the Sable episode, he can just detect a bomb on a limo, or detect any of the bombs from these thugs with the jetpacks. He could just detect things with it, which is actually kind of cool because his spider sense seems to be so different from the other versions. They get inside Spider-Man's mind, but we won't know what they did to him till later in the episode, which is a great twist, and I love the visuals when he gets mind melded essentially. I just think it's really neat, and it does have a horror vibe that actually works, and this show has failed with that quite a bit. They end up failing to defeat Spider-Man because their telekinetic powers were only putting him on the ground, so he uses these syringes that were keeping them down, and he puts them back into them to make them go down again. They both get taken down, but weirdly don't put up a fight. The Peter and MJ dynamic is strange in this whole series. Spider-Man then goes to MJ on top of this building, and they seem to be a couple, which may seem out of the ordinary, but her relationship with him is genuinely a mess, so it feels right. MJ wants to talk to Spider-Man about how she's feeling, and tells him that if he ever wishes he could be two people, one that everyone expects and one to follow your heart. He says he might have had that thought once or twice, but before they finish their conversation, someone screams down below. But before I keep going, I want to talk about that because I think that's such an interesting topic of discussion, and I like going into these heavy subjects when I can in these videos. There is a time in your life, I think, that everyone kind of thinks this way. We want to do what's best for people, but it's also like, shouldn't we be doing what's best for ourselves too? I have a hard time doing what's best for me because I tend to want to make people happy. I'm just more of a selfless person than a selfish person. But I think everyone should find the perfect balance of that because that really matters to you as a person. But if there's someone that's just not worth your respect or you don't owe them anything, then just leave them out of your life. That's the best you can do. Ultimately, it's up to you on finding what kind of balance you can choose in your life, and it comes down to each situation because everyone's situation is so different. So that's my thought process on that. Getting back to the episode, Spider-Man doesn't want to hear any more of her nonsense and pushes her off the building. No, but he catches her, and I guess that's just Spider-Man Riz to do that sort of thing. We skip to Peter and Harry talking at ESU, and Peter is like dating both MJ and Indy. Like he slept over at Indy's the night before, and then he saw a movie with MJ, so Peter is just him apparently. I guess the Spider-Man really took Miles' advice in the Spider-Verse movies.
I can do both!
Indy ends up telling Peter that the twins escaped and freed Silver Sable and Pterodax, the villains from the previous episodes. Pterodax is attacking the ESU Science Center, and Harry goes because Oscorp is building that Science Center since it's under construction, and he's somehow gonna make sure it's not gonna get blown up or something. Weird excuse. What I like is that this is the Science Center that was being mentioned in episode 1, so just some great continuity from the previous episodes in this episode. Pterodax has hostages, and Spider-Man takes them out quickly in a pretty badass way. It's awesome, it just shows that he truly knows what he's doing, especially when there are hostages involved. During the fight, the ESU sign falls on Harry's hand or something. I'm not sure, but he sprained it. Peter arrives at his and Harry's apartment, but before he even gets in the door, MJ and Indy confront him about trying to go for both of them, and then after, this weird sequence plays out.
There's no 2-for-1 special. There's no That's double dipping, Peter. That's double dipping.
I don't know if they were trying to do a horror thing, but if so, I think they are doing a good job. And this gives us a hint of what's going on, which is cool.
And as I've said this so often, the animation is so superb. And these action scenes, they rival the live-action Spider-Man movie. I mean, I am fascinated by the great animation in this show.
You are too
in
kind.
this whole series.
You are too kind. Well, look at this. Now you know it's got to be in his head because
this scene is hot.
The two women of his dreams standing there with their arms around. Now, there was a draft where we went a little further, and Peter was actually picturing himself, I think, sandwiched between them as they pull him into the room. And
I'm done. Cut the show. I'm done. Take me off. Take me off. Cut the show.
Can you make that commitment for him?
Called him in.
That got the big ixnay.
Funny, I was thinking of myself in the same situation while I was watching it.
Fans out there could email Morgan and I will send you those pages.
Peter goes to sell his pictures of his fight with Pterodax, and we learn Kraven the Hunter is back in town, and that's just awesome that the Spider-Man has already met him and fought him. I just think that's really, really cool. We also learn that Spider-Man sent him to a Ukrainian gulag. Silver Sable and Kraven spy on Parker and go after him into this alleyway, but he changes into Spider-Man as soon as they turn the corner. They begin to fight, but Silver Sable gets tied up for the police, and Kraven escapes. But before she leaves with the cops, she tells him that there's other ways to get revenge on Spider-Man. Spider-Man and MJ talk about everything that's been going on, and Spider-Man was worried about her, Harry, and says Peter as well. Spider-Man feels guilty of always putting her in danger, so he brings her into an alleyway and reveals himself to her. And this is so cool. I'll talk about this in a second, but wow, I love this moment. They begin to kiss, but Kraven starts shooting at Spider-Man, but he dodges everything, so he grabs MJ, who's nearby, and sticks his dagger into her, and as she draws her last breath, she tells him that she's so happy, and she dies. We see Peter at her grave talking to Harry. Harry tells him does he see now why he hates Spider-Man, and Peter understands. Peter goes away from her grave. He's mad, upset, sad, and is dealing with the emotions of grief. Peter is distraught. We then see a stranger talking to him, and we hear him talk.
But wouldn't that anger you feel be better channeled into revenge?
I love that they got Stan Lee here to voice this random guy to push him over the edge. It's such a well set up scene. So good. And this actually might be one of his best voice lines in anything. Like, he does a terrific job.
Well, that's been one of the things that's been, really kind of exciting about the whole series is everyone's quest for and passion for quality has been really high. No one's just said, oh, it's just an old TV show, whatever, flush it through. This has been something that's been special from the get-go. I think you mentioned earlier Stan Lee, because Stan Lee's story just resonates so strongly and through the ages. How can we do anything but our best on something like this?
Exactly, and and he's still he's still with us, and you want to do well by him. And
he's on this commentary track.
I can't wait. That's so cool, man.
And he also did a cameo voice in the final episode.
Yeah, he was good too.
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, he can act. It was nice.
Don't act so surprised.
No, when we were kids, you always go, "Hey, true believer, that's Stan Lee." You remember that? So it was nice to see he can really deliver the goods.
And, seeing the pleasure on his face when he saw an episode for the first time was, I think, one of the high points of the entire year plus that it took us to put this together for me personally.
Yeah, it was very nice because we heard early on that he liked the show, so it was very cool.
He gets him to channel his anger into revenge and makes him give that idea of him wanting to kill Craven. He tells him that he deserves to die, doesn't he? And what would he do to make his vengeance real? And Peter says anything. He wants to kill Craven. He wants revenge. We then see he's in the van, and the twins captured him at the beginning of the episode. The whole episode has been a dream sequence. They want to manipulate him into killing Craven because he helped an unknown source that did experiments on their parents, which gave them these powers, killed them in the process. They tell him where Craven is hiding through mind stuff, and they send him off. They kidnapped MJ just for insurance and to make him think that she's really dead, and if they really need to kill her. Spider-Man swings in a silent and determined way, and you can feel the emotions that he's going through as he swings below in an uncaring way, not even caring if he hits civilians below, and the first part ends. I won't rank it until we get to the next part, but wow, this episode, it's such a trip. Usually I don't like dream sequence episodes like this, but they make it work, and they make it work so well. It serves a narrative purpose too. This isn't just a one-off episode. This episode is just so awesome. Obviously, when you're first watching this episode, it's going to be your best experience, especially for this kind of episode, because it gives you a sense of like what's really going on here. Something doesn't feel right. The way they manipulated Spider-Man was just brutal in a way that I enjoyed, and that's why they could get away with it. That's what I kind of wanted from these stories, for this darker tone to actually have an impact and not just for the sake of doing it, which I don't mind sometimes, but this is what I truly wanted, man. I like that we feel Spider-Man's emotions so well, especially anyone who has suffered a major loss. You can totally feel what he's going through right now. I just love this. Let's talk about it more once we finish this last episode.
So these particular episodes went through a lot of incarnations. Morgan, I recall that by the time we got towards the end of the series, a lot of money was being spent on a daily basis on large crews, both at Mainframe and down in Los Angeles at Sony. And we were trying to get premises approved by our clients, and that would allow you to move forward with stories and script. And there were a lot of last minute things that happened here. Tell us your recollections.
Yeah, I think the idea was, well, how do we do this and use some of the resources we've used throughout the season and keep it contained? And I said, okay, how about this? We make it like bigger than anything you've seen yet during the season. And Steve and I were working on a plot line that had gotten approved for about 5 seconds with dirigibles over. It was the idea. Steve, wasn't it to like the Fast and Furious
yacht racing
Fast
over
and
the
Furious
harbor?
in the sky.
Fast and
yacht
Furious in the
races.
sky.
I'm not sure that dirigibles really compare to speeding automobiles.
They don't go fast.
Maybe
do
you
they?
had an angle.
Yeah. Well, they were going to be rocket powered.
Does the MTV audience know what a dirigible is? Or?
No.
A blimp?
Remember the
Zeppelin?
Hindenburg? Yeah. So I'm like, what? So that didn't last. And then there was a storyline about something to do with everybody on campus was getting tattooed. And the tattoos were all like some psychic link turning them to like a hive.
Temporary tattoos.
Temporary tattoos.
That's good.
That was a good one. And I do not remember why that one didn't work out. Audu?
I'm not sure exactly. I think it was just somebody at the top just thought the story wasn't dynamic enough to bring it all home. But we had some really cool ideas. As people put the tattoos on, they were drawn into sort of this group mind. And at that point, the twins, Roxanne and Roland, were developed as the ones who were actually controlling all of these campus characters, all of these students.
I'm glad you didn't use that plot because I've been making notes. And the next thing that I write, believe me, it's going to feature tattoos.
It's going to be your new comic heroes. They're the tattoo crowd.
Tattoo man.
Yeah.
So from that premise, well, the idea was that in CG, you could do a tattoo really easily and really inexpensively. In a 2D cartoon, if you did a tattoo, you'd have to draw it each and every single frame. But because of the nature of the medium, tattooing and surface texturing was something that was really quite straightforward for us. But from that draft premise that didn't survive, what did survive are the twins, Roxanne and Roland Gaines.
I remember sitting in a story meeting, and we were onto a whole new area, and I don't remember what it was, but in the middle of that I thought, you know what, we had abandoned the idea of a 2-part season ender. In the middle of that, something happened. I said, you know what, this is a much more interesting story. Take the mind control thing from the tattoo thing and turn it into something totally different, and we came up with this 2-parter that allowed a whole episode to really take place in the mind of Spider-Man.
The episode starts with a silent Spider-Man, and that's how you know shit is about to get real. Run for your life. It's over. Spider-Man takes out Kraven's goons and instantly starts beating the absolute crap out of Kraven, and we hear him say,
I'm gonna rip you apart, Kraven.
The way we see him fight is so different. We see him in a more aggressive way, and you can tell he's giving it his all. Even Kraven comments on it. Spider-Man wraps a web around Kraven's neck, and he's strangling him to death, and he's about to kill him.
This is for you, MJ.
But before he does, he sees the ESU Science Center sign still intact, and the whole place isn't under construction. He lets Kraven go and is confused on what's happening. He steps on Kraven's neck and asks him when they last met face to face, and he tells him that they met a long time ago. And again, he's confused and webs up Kraven for the police and talks to Jonah Jameson, the cop, and starts asking a bunch of questions pertaining to recent events. And when he does, he goes to Harry, and he has no cast. Peter then goes to Indy and gets her to look through the news database because he remembers things near the location he was in originally, and he finds it and instantly starts heading over there. There's a pretty cool Spider-Man suit-up scene here. I love this.
A bit of trivia there. The address that's listed is Excelsior Drive.
Oh, I didn't notice. I love that. That's great.
I was actually working up in Canada at Mainframe, and I got a phone call from downstairs saying, what should the address be? I said, Excelsior Drive. And the date, the numbers before it are actually the release date of the Spider-Man feature film.
You're a great man, Ira.
They learn that Kraven is in custody from the news, and they steal MJ's phone and call Peter since they know he's Spider-Man. They tell him that'll kill MJ if he doesn't kill Kraven the Hunter. And while he's on the phone, Indy thinks Peter is onto a big story and follows him to the warehouse he was going to. Spider-Man busts into the warehouse and starts throwing hands. Indy starts heading up to see the action, and the twins start escaping, so Spider-Man follows them up to the roof. Spider-Man is going after the girl, and he pushes through her psychic powers and starts strangling her, and she keeps using her psychic powers on him, and she accidentally falls over the roof. MJ weirdly goes, "Oh no." And Spider-Man looks behind him and sees the other twin and his sister pop up right next to her. He looks down below on who he accidentally put over the edge, and it's Indy. He starts going to check up on her, and we skip over to her being in the hospital, and we find out that she might never regain consciousness. Harry brings his hatred back to Spider-Man, and Jonah on the news shows the people of New York that he's not a hero. What's weird is that MJ doesn't mention the twins having psychic powers and made her see things, so she doesn't defend Spider-Man. I just think that's a bit weird. Spider-Man finds the guy who owns the warehouse, which is the Stan Lee character, and he tells them where the twins are.
We actually had a lot of fun designing these characters as well. The character of Roland, we based on Harry Houdini. We took photographs of Houdini and we sketched him out and we made him kind of young and sleek and suitable for an MTV crowd. And it was really fun kind of crafting the look of the show. Once you started kind of working at the premise, we were right on top of it with sketches.
Well, also in the voice casting, I hope we've mentioned the names of all the other wonderful actors who we've had throughout the series. But to single out in this episode, we got Jeremy Piven to play the brother and Kathy Griffin, an inspired bit of casting, to play the sister. Well, Kathy is so funny, and her intonation is so funny. But if you toned it down a bit, what you got is really creepy and scary. and it really worked for us. The two of them together had this fun chemistry, because there's this subtext of almost kind of an incestual relationship.
They've always got
them.
their hands on each other.
Yeah.
What? We're flying to Philadelphia! Oh, hell no! Hell no! Whoa!
We go to another warehouse because they really have a hard time building sets in the show. We see the two twins talking about their victory as they close these metal doors down, with them being on different sides of the doors. But when they get to the final door, the girl twin steps in webbing, and the door shuts, separating the two twins. Spider-Man starts chasing the brother with a sedative that he stole from the hospital, and he successfully takes the brother down. The sister drives into the door with a propane truck, and...
Really? Try using your brain to block this!
Damn, Spider-Man, he just straight up started choking her. That's how you know this man is serious, like golly. She turns into Indy, and this throws him off and he lets go of his grip on her, and she turns sharply, making Spider-Man lose balance and drop the sedative. She keeps moving forward, and Spider-Man again uses his spider sense to see things in front of him, and he sees a high voltage box, and she's going to ram right into it, and this causes the propane to blow up and the whole building to explode, in a pretty cool way, I will add. And we also see more of one of his battle damage designs, and I like that this one looks like the one after he fought the Green Goblin in the first movie. MJ comes to check up on Peter, and we learn that he wasn't in class and he hasn't checked his cell phone, and she was worried, so she checked up on him. She says,
I used to believe in Spider-Man too. He let us all down.
Again, defend him! You know that the twins can make you see things. So I don't know, maybe she just doesn't understand the twins' full powers or something, but I feel like this would also be public news since the cops who were transporting the twins last episode knew what they did, so I'm just not sure. MJ tells him that he made her feel like more than she ever could be, which I think is referencing the first Spider-Man movie because there's not moments like that in the show. He just tells her that he can't do this, and we see this distraught Peter putting his Spider-Man suit in the suitcase, putting bricks in it. He monologues about letting everyone down as we skip over to the people he let down. He let down the people he was trying to protect, this city, his loved ones, and the ones in his life who truly mattered to him. He goes to a dock thinking that Spider-Man is done, and he's just causing more pain than anything else, and he can't live with that burden any longer. He throws the suitcase into the water, and that's the end of the episode.
We have the moon on one side and the sun on the other, setting up the dichotomy of the two personas, Spider-Man and Peter Parker.
Yeah, look at this.
This is good.
We just want people to come back to a second season.
No, that
wondering.
is beautiful. That is so dramatic. What
Slow
a great,
pullback.
Great ending.
Stan, sign off for the True Believers, Excelsior.
Oh,
come on.
Hey, I tell you, that is so good it calls for only one last remark. Excelsior, True Believers.
You know what's weird? I think this might be the first Spider-Man who's actually given up being Spider-Man, like legitimately, just because the show never got another season. Also, another reason I think this was canceled is because Spider-Man 2 also made him give up, so it would be rehashing that story. I truly feel like they were getting to a point in this show where they were finding the direction of the show, and I think if they got another season, we would have gotten something amazing, but unfortunately that never happened. I'll give these episodes a 7 out of 10. The only reason it's not a 9 is because I feel like we needed another episode just to flesh this out a bit more. We had this whole episode of them fucking with Spider-Man's head to manipulate him into killing Kraven, and it gets undone 7 minutes, which is technically 4 minutes, because the previously on segment lasted 2 minutes, and the theme song lasts another minute. And then if you want to get even more technical, we don't see Spider-Man for another minute and a half, because we're shown the twins talking about them manipulating Spider-Man. So we get 3 minutes of this brainwashed Spider-Man, which just really sucks because of how great the last episode was, and then that pretty much gets undone immediately. I would have loved to see more of this bloodlusted Spider-Man. Just give us another episode where he's actually trying to find Kraven, and in the process he does some messed up things on his quest for revenge. Then at the end we can see this Kraven scene, and he could have had small hints in the episodes of what's really going on. Then in the next episode you get him finding the twins and all that, and he can reflect even more on what he's done because of the horrific things he did in the previous episode, and still have Indy in the hospital. It's just frustrating. I feel like for this show, I really keep making up scenarios where I could find the show to be better, but the thing is, I'm finding so much missed potential because these ideas aren't fleshed out as much as I want them to be. I did enjoy these episodes still. I think that the twins are fun, and it was really cool how they were able to mess with Spider-Man in a way the other villains couldn't. Kraven was awesome to see for the short time we saw him. I like what happened with Indy is the reason he's going to give up being Spider-Man, but that being the main reason seems forced because, again, people should know that what the twins can do, and I don't feel like Peter would give up over this one mistake. And that's also another reason I think this deserved another episode. Or hell, give us some more moments or reasons he wanted to quit in the previous episodes. I think that also would have been better to flesh this out more. Maybe he blames himself for not helping Electro because he feels like he could have done more to help, and feels like beating him up as Spider-Man wasn't the way to solve the problem. or the lizard dying. He blames himself for not being able to save Connors. Like, there's a ton of ways to make this better, and I just don't think they tried. Again, I'm not blaming the people behind the show because I guarantee it's not their fault, because originally this was a whole different show, and when the big guys came in to get their hands on it, it most likely messed with a lot of their ideas. I know I said this before, but I truly do not blame the people working on this show. This show was an interesting one to cover because it's so different. Different in good ways? No, but there's some stuff in here that I really liked, but most of it didn't work. Will this be a show that people think of when they think of one of the greatest Spider-Man shows? I don't think so. I think this show will be forgotten, and I don't think we'll ever see this version again, but I'm still glad we have this weird outcast of a show because we can look back on it and say they tried their best with what they were given. And it's a unique and interesting take on the character. The trivia for both episodes is the female officer in the beginning was originally the pop princess in the reworked episode 1, which again, no details about that episode. The twins' names are taken from French literature. The hospital was originally created for the original episode 1, and that's about it. Now, there's not enough here to make an iceberg, so I'm just going to list my findings. Andrew Garfield wore a Spider-Man the New Animated Series Halloween suit, and I'm legitimately surprised they made one for the new animated series, since Tobey's version exists. Still cool that he wore that suit though. I did mention the main DVD is the best one to get, but they also had like 3 episode DVDs, and the order is also messed up on them, but it's also not going in the air order or the production order. It's completely doing its own thing. It has some neat art on the front, but it's not worth your money. From what I remember on Disney Plus, they went with the airing order, but they had to change dialogue sometimes, and they had to cut out scenes because this was a darker show. I saw this one person post that they made a Blu-ray version in Russia, but it definitely seems like a bootleg copy. He even says when he checked out the Blu-ray that it wasn't in 1080p, so I think he got a bootleg but didn't know. But I'm throwing this in here because maybe this is real, and a Russian person in the comic can confirm this. I had to add this comment because it was so funny. So this guy says about the show, this animation is so shitty. Was this actually on TV? And then the other guy said, shut up, kid. Probably still swimming in your dad's ball sacks when this came out on MTV. Peak Instagram comments. An artist called Jeff Matsuda, who has worked on some of the greatest animation pieces. He did the character designers for the Batman show, and also was a character designer on the Hulk vs. Wolverine short film. And all the character designs look fantastic in those. But before they were making this show, we obviously know they were originally going to have this be an Ultimate Spider-Man show. And he did some character designs for that animated show. And I wish we got this instead because this is sick. And here's some more designs. Like, I love this so much. Why didn't we get this Ultimate Spider-Man show instead of what we got, man? I think they could have done an amazing job. I also like how skinny Spidey is. It just makes him feel slick and fast with his mobility. It looks like they even got this far with them putting in this little episode concept drawings. I don't like how Peter looks here in that one, but he looks a lot better in the previous designs. You could definitely see the Mark Bagley inspiration. I'm not sure if these other two are from Jeff, but I think they looked cool. And I think it's more concept art before the whole movie thing happened. There's 2 videos of Neil at the Tony Awards, and he does some Spider-Man things. So I'm going to try and play all of those, and hopefully I can.
Any concerns I had about this Spider-Man rig failing have been overshadowed by the searing pain in my junk. Now, please welcome the chairman of the American Theater.
Welcome back. I just like to say that I'm not going to be spending the whole show doing Spider-Man jokes. Because it seems it's too easy. It's too easy. It's expected. But it is such a big story this season, I feel like we need to do something. So let's put 30 seconds on the clock. As many Spider-Man jokes as I can get out in half a minute. Ready? And go. Pretty soon we can change the name to Spider-Man Turn Off the Lawsuits. Wow. Spider-Man, the only show that warns you about strobe lights and falling actors. Boom. No audience members were harmed in the making of this musical. Yet. The only thing not falling over Spider-Man are the ticket prices. Julie Taymor found out it was over when she woke up and found the head of Warhorse in her bed. Spider-Man's the only show on Broadway where the actors in the cast are actually in cast. I heard they're changing it from Spider-Man Turn the Dark to Spider-Man Turn Off the... Oh! All right. Great. 7, 6. All right. Got that out of the way. Okay, one more. I said Bono, a congratulatory cable, and it snapped.
It's funny because these are like the only 2 videos Neil actually talks about Spider-Man in any sort of way. You can tell he's not his biggest fan as the other actors, but still loves the character. Plus, nobody thinks of Neil as Spider-Man because that's just not what he's known for. He also does a small, funny little musical song with Hugh Jackman, and I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'll leave the whole thing in the description.
What you're saying, you're saying you think you'd do a better job hosting than I would.
Well, can I be honest?
Please.
Okay, what I'm saying is, any show you can host, I can host better. I can host any show better than you.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Your show is How I Met Your Mother.
And In Spider-Man PS4 for the PC, you can mod him to have the new animated series look, and you can either go with the animated one or a more realistic looking one, and you can do that with all the other Spider-Man because the mod community for that game is insane. So if you wanted to play as any of the animated Spider-Man, you could do so. They did sell a Spider-Man Teen-As t-shirt, and that's about all I could find. Again, you have to be thinking that they thought this was going to be connected to the Raimi movies, so any merch from this Spider-Man would be also tied to that Spider-Man. They did make 2 toys of the show, and it's the Lizard and Spider-Man, and these are pretty cool. They truly do look like they came out of the show, but if you want to get them, they are going to be expensive. Lizard here is going for $1,229, and I couldn't find a price on Spidey. I wonder how much these were back then. I'm going to show off this awesome animation by the artist JF on his YouTube, because this isn't Spider-Man Teen-As related, but this feels like something that would have been aired in that era, and it looks like it would have aired on MTV too, and it's insanely unique and super cool, so I had to show it off. I would love to have a show in this art style. The way Spidey looks and the way he moves is just so awesome. Like, yeah, it's a bit choppy sometimes, don't get me wrong, but this is one person animating this. I could imagine this being absolutely fantastic, especially if they did him as a younger Spider-Man, which he looks like. He looks like he would have had that sort of Ditko Peter vibe, and that's great. I'll leave the full intro in the description. Check it out. It's heat. Speaking of Spider-Man shows, this MTV Spider-Man was having a fan-made season 2 for it, but unfortunately it was canceled because a lot of work had to go into it, and the people on the project were so busy, so it's sad because I think they could have pulled off some great stuff, especially with how it was looking. I'm going to give a deep dive on how the production was going because I want to hurt your soul like it hurt mine. So yeah, let's do it. Carnage was going to appear, Daredevil was going to appear, specifically Ben Affleck's, Martin Lee was going to appear, Moon Knight was going to appear, Shocker was going to appear, Beetle was going to appear, Mysterio was going to appear, Vulture was going to appear, Morbius was going to appear, Sergey was going to return, Kingpin was going to return, Kraven was going to return, Talon was going to return, Captain Stacy was in it, Gwen Stacy was in it, Peter would have worn his human spider suit sometime in the series, they remodeled the graveyard used in the previous episodes, Andy was going to wake up from her coma, Gwen Stacy was going to join the trio, Carnage was going to fight Daredevil and Spider-Man. The relationship between the trio was very complicated during the beginning of the season. The kid who collects Spider-Man was an idea and supposed to be an emotional factor in the first episode. Rather than Martin Lee, Hobgoblin was going to be the main villain. Andy was going to testify against Spider-Man in court. The old Spidey suit was found and stolen by Talon, and Peter wore the human spider suit to fight Talon to get it back. Peter was going to visit Aunt May to relieve the stress from Andy and his friends, but she'd have a heart attack later on. A Kraven's Last Hunt ending was planned. A dark ending with Spider-Man calling MJ to say he loved her before fighting Moreland was planned, but cycled out. MJ and Harry would figure out Peter is Spider-Man. Reed Richards would recruit Spider-Man to join the Fantastic Four at the end of the season, but this was a canceled idea. The Beetle was going to be programmed by Dr. Ziner. Venom was going to be in season 3. Symbiote Peter was a maybe. Norman Osborn was responsible for a failed experiment that would create Mr. Negative, but Norman would kill Lee's family in revenge for speaking out, and this was cycled out. Hobgoblin would have been a thief that encountered Norman's old Green Goblin tech working for the Kingpin. Kingpin would reject Hobgoblin's plea to join his crew as he was being more and more chaotic, fully embracing the Hobgoblin idea and revenge. The old Spidey suit would have been discovered by fishermen and placed in an auction that Kingpin and Harry would fight over. Harry would win and Kingpin would send Talon to steal it from him and harm Harry. This was cycled out. Harry would burn the old Spidey suit and Peter would make his own with the 2004 logos and slight changes. This was also going to be connected to Iron Man Armored Adventures. This season would take place during winter, which is such a vibe. I would have loved that. Peter was going to be a tutor later on. Harry and Gwen were going to date. Andy would have been attacked by Chameleon in order to put a worse view on Spidey, so he'd stay out of the way, so he'd be wanted. This was a canceled plan. Vulture was going to steal valuable items to save his dying wife from cancer, but she ends up dying and he ends up being one of the most ruthless villains in the series by almost killing Spider-Man. They also have full scripts. I'm not going to read them. You can check them out on the Twitter page in the description. They had also did an animatic of the first episode on their YouTube channel, and that will also be in the description. In my opinion, it seems like a lot is going on, but they could have made it work for sure. They just needed to make sure each idea is developed in a way that matters. Okay, I already edited all this, so I'm going to leave it in. So I was wrong. There are 2 different teams entirely working on 2 different versions of Spider-Man Teen-As Season 2. So everything I mentioned was from the other team that wasn't as popular, but they both knew about each other. Essentially, both of them were making their own version of Season 2. The animatic is from the more popular team, but other than that, they are both 2 different things. The art I showed was from the more popular one, not the one I was talking about. So yeah, it's a bit confusing, but both ended up being canceled in the end. Here are some of the character designs for the characters that were in that scrapped episode 1. There's this character called Geldof, and you can see all the concept artwork here. It's interesting to think what this episode would have been about because we almost know nothing about it. We know some things from the trivia I had mentioned, and we know that Tim did storyboards of it, but yeah, there's a ton of different versions of Geldof, and they have the other character, which is Morlock. There's a lot less to say about him since there's not much concept art of him. I wonder what these two would have been like or what their powers were. I think it could have been interesting. Maybe they could have reused these guys for season 2 in some way if they had gotten it. There's also some designs from Tim that were on his Spider-Man TNAS page, and it's interesting because I didn't see this stuff in the show. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some places that are designed and some objects that are designed, and these are actually pretty well made, so props to you, Tim. These are dope. Mainframe Studios, who did the CGI for the show, said this in 2020, and I quote, "Well, we'd have to start on the model first. As we said, we would love to make more Spider-Man, but that's Marvel's call. You'll just have to rewatch season 1 until that happens." End quote. And this is notable because they only have like 2 whole posts on their page of the show. Tim Eldren has a couple of interesting paragraphs from his website that I would like to quote, so everything here is being quoted. "On the technical side, it was my first widescreen series. Up until then, all the shows I'd worked on were in the old 4:3 aspect ratio. Our storyboards were still drawn in 4:3, so the animation studio simply extended the image field on the sides. It was a big deal back then to have the entire island of Manhattan built in CG. It had a few hotspots with enough detail to serve as hero locations. It was an expensive data-heavy investment and tended to pay for itself over multiple seasons, but in the end, we only got to do one. I'm still not quite sure why the show didn't continue. Despite the phenomenal success of the franchise, I only recall some vague hints about lawsuits keeping it locked up in court. The takeaway, sometimes it actually doesn't pay to be successful. Sony's next effort, Spectacular Spider-Man, wouldn't appear until 2008. I worked on that one too. I was the only TNAS veteran on the crew, which makes me the only artist to have worked on every Spider-Man show from 2001 to 2020. My own personal opinion of TNAS was that the writing, acting, and storyboarding were all great, but the character animation was a poison pill. It pains me to say that because a lot of talented people worked really hard on it, but I can never really get past its shortcomings. Distorted bodies, painted on costumes, and unattractive faces made it hard on the eyes. Again, I don't want to degrade the effort, which was heroic, but these were all choices I wouldn't have made. Tim Eldren also has storyboard animax for the first episode and flash memory, which I'm not going to show the full thing because I'm leaving that whole website in the description so you can again check it out for yourself. But he does have some trivia for the first episode, and I quote from him, "The villain in this episode was called Blue Streak in the script, then later evolved into Rocket Racer, and finally Turbojet, aka Lewis Wilder. This was because the edict from Marvel was that if a character design changed significantly from the comics, they should just become a new character. We were happy to follow that edict. I took part in the design development, see my version below in the design," end quote. Some small facts are that this show wasn't canceled due to low ratings. It was canceled because MTV didn't think it fitted with the other things on their network. In 2004, the series was nominated for an Annie Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animated Television Production, while Keeping Secrets got a nomination in Outstanding Storyboard in an Animation Television Production. They pitched Neil's voice down when he's Spider-Man. There are a bit of videos I would like to show that I think are cool for the show.
Neil Patrick Harris is so much fun to work with. He really knew who this character was, and he doesn't need much direction. He'll just sort of reach into himself and he'll give it to you right on the first take.
So then you use the computer, you bring up Jane Perkins' face, you bring up Silver Sable's face, you merge the two, boom. Jane Perkins is Silver.
Jane Perkins is Silver Sable. But if she's been masquerading as the mayor's aide, she'd have had plenty of chances to kill him. She's after someone else.
Neil, thank you. You've been wonderful today. Got it. Moving on.
I'm Spider-Man.
That was fun. This'll look cool on DVD.
Well, we don't have a choice now, do we?
Sorry.
And you'll also notice that our main characters don't have too many costume changes. That's because we'd have to build an entirely new body.
People have asked me about that. Why do they never change their clothes?
Well, the fact of the matter is that we would have had to go through so many levels of approval, both through Sony and Marvel and MTV, to get permission for a costume change on Peter, that at a certain point it was like, let's just move forward.
Yeah. MJ, I probably, no joke, probably did 110 different outfits for before everybody settled on the one that's there. I mean, major extremes and different styles. We tried dresses, shorts,
I'll make you a
skirts,
promise
everything.
right now. We do a second season, I will change Peter's shirt.
All right.
This piece is an alternate direction that we explored early in the process, where we wanted to really have the tune-styled lines defining the exterior of the character as an alternate reality, possibly spider sense. From a music point of view, I think the biggest challenge for the entire series was that main title. Because at the very beginning, we actually used what we often would call a temp track, which is just something for us to cut something visually to. And we chose some Digweed music that we couldn't ultimately use because it was not owned by our show. And then it was this incredible kind of give and take where they'd come back with a draft, we'd recut the picture. They'd then cut some more music, and there was just a lot of different flavors that had to be explored to sort of figure out the thing that worked. And we probably went through 20 different main title themes.
Long gestation process, longer than probably the longest one I've been involved with.
It was 6 months of playing ping pong with those ideas.
Ye gods.
For me, there's a number of characters from the Marvel Universe I would love to bring out, and I would love to reinterpret them in ways that are dynamic and cool for our show, because I think that's what the fans are going to want to see.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I think we need more cute chicks, too.
Another thing is, if we were to proceed with the series, building an animated series in the computer is cumulative, where you start with very little. The Party was our first show. It was set on the campus. We had only a few characters. The farther we got into the series, the more sets we had, the more characters we had. So that, by extension, means that if we did another 13, we would have more puppets to work with. We'd have more sets. We'd have more flexibility. Spider-Man swinging through, landing on the side of the building. We've got that in the computer. It works. We'd be able to reapply it. And those same man hours that were spent solving that for the first season would be able to be applied to subtlety of performance or adding additional characters into a scene. I think that it only gets better in this medium.
In other words, you would start with all the assets we built up over 13 episodes.
And add to it.
Sounds to me like second season would be even better than first season.
You might be right there.
It could only be. More ideas, more fun.
The goal on a series like this is that you will have enough success that people will let you do it again, because there are just so many stories that are waiting to be told. The video that you're about to see is the original audition piece that was created by Mainframe to help land the Spider-Man contract.
And that's all, folks. This was a bit of a crazy video to make because it was really hard to make. Unlike my previous big breakdowns, this show didn't have as much as a lasting impact as the last two shows. No one talks about this show and it rarely comes up, and I can totally see why. I think if it just maybe even had one more season, I think they would have done an amazing job, and I feel as though this show would have been talked about more. I don't think we'll ever see this Spider-Man again, which is insanely sad. We've seen Tobey come back, Andrew come back, we've seen Spider-Man TASM come back, and we've seen Spectacular come back, even Unlimited. But this guy will never get his chance to come back. He'll always be the Spider-Man that was forgotten, and that's a damn shame. I didn't go through the whole computer animated process because I didn't find it too interesting, but if there's some hardcore computer animated geeks out there, they do give a lot of information on how they did certain scenes back in those days when the technology was still being developed. Obviously the show looks dated by today's standards, but it was still insanely enjoyable, and I honestly didn't mind how it looked back then, and sometimes even now, but it still has a ton of rough spots, but overall it didn't bother me because I grew up on it. That's the end of the video, guys. We are now venturing into new territory with the Spider-Man games. So next we are going to be doing Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, and as always you can see that video 4 months early on the Patreon, so if you do, that will be in the description. Thanks to my wonderful editor Nito for working on the editing for this video, and for Vic doing an amazing job on the thumbnails, as he's been doing for all of them. He's been doing really amazing, and I'm insanely appreciative of both of them. That's all, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.